Hey detectives! Welcome back. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Lisa Holm. Lisa Holm was born on February 7, 1998 in a small town in Sweden. It is a peaceful place where she lives with her parents and older sister. Lisa is a kind, positive, and determined person. Even before finishing her studies, she decided that she wanted to go to Australia to study architecture. Lisa has also had a lot of experience traveling with her family, visiting many other countries. In the summer of 2015, when Lisa turned 17, she finally found her first job at a café about a 40-minute drive from home. During the first few weeks, her parents still drove her to work. However, not long after, her father decided to buy her a scooter so that she could get around on her own. Lisa had this type of driver's license before she turned 18, which is the age required to apply for a car driver's license. She was very happy to receive this gift because it was an opportunity for her to go to work by herself without having to rely on others. However, in the first few weeks, her father still accompanied her by car because Lisa lacked experience driving on the road. She only worked on weekends, and her father accompanied her every morning and evening. This habit continued until June 7th, when he finally allowed her to drive herself to the cafe. Around lunchtime, her parents decided to visit her at work and have lunch together. That day, the cafe was quite crowded, so Lisa was very busy with work. She took a short break to have lunch with her parents, then they returned home. At 6:23 p.m., Lisa sent a text message to her father saying that she was coming home. Just 3 minutes later, her father received a call from Lisa, but no one answered. He heard some voices in the background and thought that Lisa had accidentally called his number while talking to her colleague. He also heard the sound of a car door closing. He called Lisa's name several times, but no one answered. Then, he ended the call and started waiting for her to come home. However, she did not appear. After an hour, Lisa's parents began to worry. They thought something might have happened to her on the way since she should have arrived by now. This was the first time she had ridden a scooter alone, and her father was very concerned about her safety. He tried calling her several times, but Lisa's phone was turned off. After waiting for a while, her father decided to set off, hoping to meet Lisa on the way because she could have taken the shortest route. Her father was afraid that Lisa might have had an accident, so he drove carefully, paying attention to the road but did not see his daughter. Finally, he went to the cafe but could not find Lisa. When he arrived at her workplace, he noticed that Lisa's scooter was parked in front of the building. At that moment, he panicked because he could not find his daughter despite having come all this way. When he saw her scooter, he immediately calmed down, thinking that maybe she was just late for work for some reason. However, there was no one in the cafe, and he noticed something else. Lisa's scooter key was still in the ignition, with a helmet dangling from the handle. These things made him believe that something was wrong with his daughter. She would never leave the key in the scooter while leaving it unattended in the parking lot. Meanwhile, Lisa's mother contacted the cafe owner, hoping to find clues about her daughter's whereabouts. However, the cafe owner claimed that he did not know where Lisa was. According to the cafe owner, Lisa had called the staff around 6 p.m. and they told her that they were closing the cafe. After the call from Lisa's mother, the cafe owner immediately got in his car and went to the cafe. On the way, the cafe owner also contacted 4 friends who lived nearby, asking them to help find Lisa. When the cafe owner arrived, they began searching both the cafe and the surrounding area. They hoped that Lisa might have decided to take the bus instead of the scooter. Lisa's mother and sister drove to the bus station in their town to check the schedule. Unfortunately, Lisa was not on the bus. Her family immediately contacted the police. It was dark. The police quickly expanded the search. The fact that Lisa's motorbike was left in the parking lot with the keys made them consider the possibility that Lisa had been kidnapped. Such incidents are quite rare in Sweden, especially in the remote rural area where she lived. Therefore, the police quickly mobilized teams with sniffer dogs, while other officers began knocking on doors near the café. When Lisa's classmates and friends learned about her missing, they shared information about the case on social media, hoping to attract more attention and find witnesses. The search went on all night but yielded no results. On Monday morning, the police department announced Lisa's missing to the public and asked anyone with information to come forward. At the same time, a man working in a warehouse across the street from the cafe found a motorcycle glove on the floor and reported it to the police. Detectives had checked the warehouse the night Lisa went missing but did not find the glove. They later showed the glove to Lisa's parents, who confirmed that it belonged to their daughter. This further strengthened the theory that Lisa had been kidnapped, and the police intensified their search efforts. By that time, news of Lisa's missing had captured the nation's attention, and hundreds of volunteers had joined the search. On Tuesday, the police received some alarming new leads. Volunteers searched the area around a dirt road a few hundred yards from the cafe. During the investigation of the crime scene, investigators collected several pieces of evidence related to Lisa, including a phone case, a receipt, a ticket, and a broken smartphone screen. They later found other parts of the smartphone, Lisa's ID card, and several other receipts scattered along the dirt road. This evidence made the police almost certain that Lisa had been kidnapped. They mobilized every available resource for the search, and the number of participants grew. The case became a major news topic in Sweden, and hundreds of volunteers from across the country joined the search. A local missing persons organization also joined the effort. The scale of the search for Lisa became the largest in the country's modern history, with more than 1,000 people involved in total. The police received numerous calls from people with information about Lisa's missing. One woman reported that before Lisa went missing, she had gone jogging. While she was jogging, a man standing next to his car stopped her and asked for directions to a city she had never heard of. He spoke to her in English. She tried to give him directions using Google Maps, but he asked her to get in his car and show him the way using his navigation device. The woman found this request suspicious, so she refused and continued walking. She also told the police that she believed she had seen the man among the workers repairing a warehouse across from the cafe. Lisa's co-workers shared a testimony with the police. On the day of her missing, a witness noticed two men standing across from the coffee shop, looking in the direction of where she worked. The witness didn't think much of it at the time, but after Lisa went missing, they decided to share it with the police. The next day, Wednesday, Lisa's father and some friends searched the dirt road where her belongings had been found the day before. When they went a little further, they found Lisa's driver's license and house keys. This suggested that Lisa may have been abducted and forced to leave the coffee shop via this road. Her kidnapper may have thrown her belongings out of the car or other vehicle they used to abduct her. Police and volunteers focused their efforts in this area, but no other items were found. That evening, a friend of Lisa's father was returning home from his search. As he passed the coffee shop, he noticed that the police had left the warehouse where Lisa's gloves were found. The man decided to go inside the coffee shop to look for any other clues. This time, he used his car's flashlight to walk around the premises since it was dark. While there, he noticed a shiny object lying on the floor. Upon closer inspection, he realized it was a pair of women's earrings. The man later reported this to the police, who showed the earrings to Lisa's parents. They confirmed that the jewelry belonged to their daughter. The police then sealed off the shed and conducted a more thorough inspection. The lead detective explained that on the first day of the search for Lisa, the priority was to find her, so the shed had not been fully inspected, and they may have missed small items such as earrings. After conducting an in-depth investigation, forensic experts and sniffer dogs were called in. They discovered a remarkable piece of evidence hidden behind a wall, which was traces of human feces. Although it seemed unrelated to the case, forensic experts developed an hypothesis regarding it. When criminals commit serious and horrifying crimes, their bodies secrete a large amount of adrenaline, which can lead them to be unable to control their urge to urinate. This often happens to murderers, who frequently urinate before or during the crime. Based on the discovery of Lisa's gloves and earrings in the warehouse area, the police hypothesized that if she had been kidnapped, the perpetrator might have dragged her into this building. Therefore, detectives did not rule out the possibility that the kidnapper may have consumed a large amount of adrenaline, leading to an inability to control himself and necessitating urination at the scene. Consequently, fecal samples were taken and sent for DNA analysis. On Friday, the search area was expanded, and volunteers went to a farm about 3.2 kilometers from the café. This farm complex consisted of large buildings where many people worked. The search team decided to check the entire area. However, after they arrived, two men appeared at the farm. They spoke no Swedish and only communicated in English. One of them claimed that the police had come to the farm to check on them. But the leader of the search party did not believe him, as he thought he would be notified if it were true. So he decided to continue searching. The two men walked around the farm, observing for a while before driving away. After about an hour, the search team discovered a pile of branches behind the cowshed. Upon closer inspection, they found a motorcycle helmet, jacket, and headphones. Police quickly arrived on the scene and confirmed that these items belonged to Lisa. They then sent forensic experts to the farm to conduct a more thorough investigation. The detectives heard stories about two strange men who tried to stop volunteers from checking the farm. The police also recalled a report about a woman who had encountered a man acting suspiciously while jogging and who spoke English. In fact, they had some idea of his identity from the very beginning of the search. They visited the houses surrounding the café. In one of the houses, two Lithuanian brothers lived with the wife of one of them. All three of them spoke no Swedish and communicated only in English. They were the only people within a few miles who did not speak the local language. The police also had other indirect reasons to suspect them. The brothers worked at the warehouse across the street from the café and at the farm where Lisa's helmet was found. They were familiar with these locations and the road leading to their house. Since there were no other suspects, the police decided to question all three of them. Forensic experts, along with volunteers, went to the farm to continue the investigation. They noticed an old trailer, surrounded by tall grass, that looked like it hadn't been used in years. However, the grass around the door was flattened, indicating that something had been there recently. In addition, the grass under the door was also matted down, indicating that the door had not been opened for a long time. When the forensic experts opened the door, they were immediately hit by a strong stench of decay. Inside the trailer were several wardrobes, most of which had previously been used as changing rooms for workers. All but one were locked, leading experts to suspect that Lisa's body might be in one of them. They began opening each one and eventually discovered Lisa's body in an open cupboard, hidden behind a pile of old clothes and rags. Despite the small size of the cupboard, the perpetrator had managed to squeeze the victim inside. Lisa had been tied up with a rope around her neck and duct tape wrapped around her head. Her pants had been pulled down, and her shirt had been pulled up. Medical experts determined that Lisa had died from strangulation, but no signs of sexual assault were found. All of her clothes were turned over to the lab for testing. As news of the discovery of her body spread rapidly across the country, headlines in Sweden focused on Lisa's abduction. When her body was found and the public learned of her brutal murder, the incident shocked the entire nation. since such crimes are extremely rare in Sweden. Everyone was taken aback that someone could commit such a brutal act. On the same day her body was discovered, something unusual and quite strange happened. A YouTube user came across a video posted 13 days before the murder, titled 13, which had a countdown timer. The most disturbing detail was that the name of the channel that posted the video was Lisa. News of this video quickly spread across the media, leaving many people stunned by the coincidence. Some began to speculate that someone had predicted the murder, but the truth was much simpler. Someone had likely changed the channel name and video title after discovering Lisa's body. This could have been to suggest another conspiracy theory or just a cruel joke. The police are trying their best to quickly find the culprit in this murder. When Lisa's body was discovered, investigators brought in the owners of the farm, Narigis Belavicius, his brother and his brother's wife, for questioning. However, all of them denied any involvement in the case. They claimed that at the time of the kidnapping, they were at home together to provide each other with an alibi. According to their story, Narigis was sleeping in his room while his wife was preparing dinner and Narigis' brother was on the computer. Around 8 p.m., Narigis woke up and went to the gas station to buy pizza and cigarettes. The police had some doubts about the testimony of them, as they might have been protecting each other. Although the police collected their DNA samples, investigators still did not find direct evidence linking them to the murder case. Forensic experts worked diligently at relevant locations, such as the barn and the farm, using all available resources and manpower, and their efforts finally paid off. In the barn area, there was a small room resembling an office, with a large window overlooking the café. When examining this room, experts discovered 15 different male semen stains on the wall and floor near the window. This suggested that someone had stood there, observing the café staff, including Lisa. The collected semen samples were promptly sent to the laboratory, where experts extracted DNA profiles from these samples. The results of the DNA analysis showed that all 15 semen traces matched the DNA of Narigis. Additionally, fecal samples found in the barn also matched his DNA. In the adjacent room, which had previously been used to store cow's milk, forensic experts found a pipe about 2 feet above the floor, covered in a thick layer of dust except for a small strip. The size of the strip matched the rope used to strangle Lisa. Blood was found on the pipe, and DNA analysis confirmed that the blood belonged to Narigis. On the floor near the pipe, they also found a piece of rope that matched the one on the pipe. Experts conducted tests and identified 2 DNA samples, Lisa's and Narigis's. This was an important step in the police investigation. They had connected the suspect to the rope used to kill the victim. Additionally, a strand of Lisa's hair was found in the room. Another crucial piece of evidence was Narigis's DNA found on her jacket. Based on this evidence, the police believed that Lisa had been murdered there. Police pieced together a similar sequence of events. Narigis had been observing the cafe for some time, and when Lisa was alone in the parking lot, he approached her. Based on the jogger's account, he may have pretended to ask Lisa for directions to a certain city or used some other tactic to trick her. Narigis may have then lured Lisa into his car to enter a route into the GPS system. Since Lisa was a kind person who always tried to help others, she may have agreed. Once she was in the car, the perpetrator covered her mouth and drove to a secluded place. At the scene, the perpetrator tied a rope around the victim's neck and hung her from a pipe. According to doctors, this action may have excited the perpetrator so much that he experienced an adrenaline rush, causing him to defecate on the spot. After the victim died, he placed Lisa's body in his car and drove to the farm, throwing her belongings out the window on the way. He hid the victim's body in the trailer's storage locker and covered it with old clothes. The entire process took less than an hour. Despite the overwhelming evidence, he maintained his innocence. His wife and brother were not involved and were released. They quickly left Sweden and returned to Lithuania. Preparations for the trial were intense. Neregius claimed that he had worked in that warehouse for a long time, so his DNA could have been present due to his work. Additionally, he had alibis from his wife and brother, although there were doubts about the reliability of both sources in court. This could work in his favor, although many uncertainties remained. However, the presence of Neregius's DNA on the victim's clothes could only be explained by his direct contact with her on the day of the murder. Furthermore, the police also found a witness who saw Neregius's car near the café just before and after Lisa's abduction. According to the witness, the car had traveled several times on the road between the café and the farm at a time when Neregius was believed to be asleep at home, according to his brother and his wife. After months of investigation, experts used the most advanced equipment to examine all the collected evidence. They found traces of Neregius's DNA on most of Lisa's clothing, including inside her underwear. With public interest piqued, the investigators continued to search for more clues that could influence the proceedings and strengthen Neregius's connection to the case. They traveled to Lithuania to speak with his wife and his brother again. The woman maintained that he had not left the house between 6 p.m. and 8 p.m., but when his brother was questioned, the detectives quickly obtained the information they wanted. After presenting the man with all the evidence against his brother and the details of what he had done to the 17-year-old girl, the man decided to cooperate with the police. He claimed that Neregius was not home that night, returning only around 7:30 p.m. He looked dirty and immediately washed all his clothes. As the police began questioning all the residents and visiting their homes, Neregius whispered to his brother to tell the police that he had been home during that time. Neregius later explained that he was afraid of being charged with a crime he did not commit, as he was an immigrant and had no alibi at the time of the abduction. The brother truly believed his cousin was innocent, but after hearing all the evidence, he realized that his initial thoughts might have been incorrect. Lisa's funeral took place just a month after her murder. The church where the funeral was held could only accommodate 130 people, but many more came to say goodbye to her. The organizers decided to set up extra chairs and screens outside so that everyone could watch the ceremony. The trial began 4 months after the murder and once again attracted national attention, placing everyone involved under a great deal of pressure. Neregius's lawyer claimed that his client's DNA could have been found on the victim's clothes because he had worked in the barn. However, the prosecutor argued that this explanation did not make sense, especially concerning Lisa's underwear. The only way the suspect's DNA could have ended up there would be if he had touched the victim's underwear. The lawyer was unable to produce any concrete evidence to prove his client's innocence. Instead, he theorized that the real killer was Neregius's brother. According to this theory, the brother took multiple samples of Neregius's DNA and deliberately left them on the victim's body and at the crime scene to confuse the case. But this defense was quickly dismissed. The trial lasted a month, and Neregius was convicted of murder and sentenced to life in a high-security prison. Although in Sweden, this prison offers the same amenities as a 3-star hotel. The lawyer appealed but was rejected. In early 2017, Neregius himself applied to be transferred to a prison in his home country of Lithuania for reasons that remain unclear. Lithuanian prisons are significantly worse than those in Sweden. Yet the court still accepted the defendant's request. After all, providing comfortable conditions of detention cost Swedish taxpayers hundreds of dollars per day per prisoner. That same year, Neregius appealed to the Lithuanian court, and his sentence was reduced from life to 15 years. However, his joy was short-lived. A few weeks later, the court overturned the decision, and Neregius was once again sentenced to life in prison, with no chance of returning to a comfortable cell in Sweden. 5 years later, in August 2022, Neregius was transferred to a prison in Lithuania. While other prisoners were being moved to another ward, one of them attacked and seriously injured Nerigis, leading to his death on the way to the hospital. As for the suspect's wife, her involvement in the case has not been completely ruled out. The police stressed that it was almost impossible for her to be directly involved in the kidnapping or murder. If that were the case, experts would have found her DNA on the victim's clothes or belongings. However, it cannot be ruled out that she knew about Nerigis's crime and tried to help him escape punishment by providing a false alibi. Nerigis's brother also raised questions. Café employees reported seeing two men standing near the barn and watching them. Assuming that one of them was Nerigis himself, the other man could have been his brother. However, the man's DNA was not found in the barn or on Lisa's clothes, making it unlikely that he was involved in the murder. Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Teresa Halbach. Teresa was born on March 22, 1980, to parents Richard and Karen Halbach. She was the youngest of 5 siblings, and the family she lived on a dairy farm. When Teresa was 8 years old, tragedy struck as her father passed away, leaving Karen to care for the family alone. Karen later married her Richard's brother, Thomas, and together they raised their blended family. Teresa is an adventurous and nature-loving individual who dreamed of becoming a National Geographic photojournalist. She excelled academically, graduating summa cum laude from the University of Wisconsin-Green Bay with a degree in photography. After college, Teresa continued her work with Pierce Photography, a company where she had interned during her studies. She also launched her own business, Photography by Teresa, operating from the Pierce studio. Teresa traveled extensively for her work and to supplement her income. She took on freelance photography jobs for Auto Trader magazine, photographing vehicles for sale. Tragically, this job ultimately resulted in her premature death. All evidence pointed to a single suspect, Stephen Avery. He had contacted Teresa to schedule a photo shoot of his sister's minivan. According to records, Teresa was last seen at 2:30 p.m. that afternoon. This was later confirmed by Stephen's nephew, Bobby, who told the police that he saw Teresa's car enter the salvage yard. Stephen was originally charged with using a gun on November 11, 2005. Subsequent charges included the murder of Teresa Halbach, her kidnapping, and the mutilation of her body. However, while being investigated for these crimes, the police found blood in the SUV Teresa's that matched Stephen's. In his room, they discovered a set of car keys belonging to Teresa. Throughout the investigation, he insisted that the police were attempting to frame him. Stephen was born on July 9, 1962, in Wisconsin, where he grew up with his parents Dolores and Alan, and siblings Charles, Earl, and Barbara. However, he had a troubled past, having dropped out of high school with a reported IQ of 70. In 1981, he was jailed for 10 months after breaking into a bar. In the following year, he was found guilty of animal cruelty for brutally killing his pet cat. The cat was doused with gasoline and set on fire, resulting in a 9-month prison sentence. Stephen had a record of behaving violently in the past, including an incident where he threatened his cousin, Sharon Morris. He chased her off the street and pointed a gun at her, claiming that she was spreading false rumors about him. Although Stephen received a 6-year sentence for this crime, but then he was given bail. However, an incident led to his wrongful imprisonment for nearly 2 decades. Henny Bjornston was attacked on a beach in Two Rivers on July 29, 1985. She described her attacker to the police, and the description closely matched Stephen. As a result, he was arrested and charged with the attack on Penny. Despite his claims of innocence, his appeals in 1987 and 1996 were denied by higher courts. Stephen's case was later taken on by the Wisconsin Innocence Project in 2001. In 2002, DNA evidence was re-examined, and he was finally exonerated of the crimes, proving his innocence. Following his exoneration, he filed a civil lawsuit against Thomas Kokarek, the former sheriff, and Dennis Vogel, the former district attorney, seeking $36 million in damages for the wrongful conviction. However, Stephen's freedom does not last long because his life is about to undergo a major change. When Teresa, a friend of Stephen's, went missing, a search was conducted at a local salvage yard. This search was initiated based on information given by Bobby, Stephen's nephew. Stephen reported that Teresa came to his location to take photos and then left. However, evidence found at the scene contradicts Stephen's testimony. These included bone fragments, a set of SUV car keys, blood in a vehicle, and a bullet from the garage with Teresa's DNA on it. As a result, Stephen was jailed for Teresa's murder. During this time, he received a sum of $400,000 in a settlement in February 2006. The investigation also involved questioning Stephen's 16-year-old nephew, Brendan Dassey. It is worth noting that Brendan was not accompanied by his parents or lawyer during the interrogation process. Initially, Brendan confessed to the crime, stating that he and Brendan had assaulted and killed Teresa before burning her body. However, Brendan later withdrew his statement, claiming that detectives had coerced him into making a false confession. In 2006, Brendan was charged as an accessory to the murder, a charge that stemmed from his initial statement. Despite the lack of physical evidence connecting him to the crime scene, but he faced the same charges as Stephen. In 2007, Stephen was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Later that year, Brendan was also found guilty of a life sentence with the possibility of parole in 2048. A conviction was made, but it was met with controversy. Many people, including Stephen's family and his ex-fiancée Sandy Greenman, still firmly believe that Stephen and Brendan are innocent. Stephen's family continues to support him and hope that the real killer will be found. Sandy has been a vocal advocate for Stephen. She described Stephen as a model inmate and argues that people wrongly tarnish his reputation. Sandy spoke out in Brendan's defense, denying allegations that he had a history of violence. In contrast, some people firmly believe that Stephen is guilty and should be in prison. One of these individuals is Jody Stokowski, another ex-fiancée of Stephen's. Jody initially supported Stephen's claim of innocence, but she later admitted that had made it up. In an interview, Jody revealed that Stephen had threatened to harm her and her family. Therefore, she believes that he is capable of murder. Jody said that Stephen wanted revenge on women, believing that he had been treated unfairly and that his life had been affected because of it. She strongly believes that Stephen is untrustworthy and described him as a monster. Stephen's defense team questioned the reliability of the blood evidence found in Teresa's car. They argued that the evidence may not have come from the crime scene, but from another source, taken from the vial containing Stephen's blood from a prior conviction. They claimed that the vial containing Stephen's blood had been tampered with and a hole could be seen in the cork. However, the prosecution countered this by conducting blood tests to check for preservatives that are often added to stored blood samples. Since no preservatives were detected, this could indicate that the blood was not old but newly drawn. Tive, which could suggest that the blood was fresh. Stephen's defense team disputed this finding, they calling in an expert witness, who claimed that the test results were unclear, and negative result could mean that there really is no preservative or that the testing technology is not advanced enough to detect preservatives. Both Stephen and Brendan have repeatedly appealed their convictions, but have been denied and they remain incarcerated. Brendan is currently be justified Professors Laura Nyroder and Brendan Drizzen from Northwestern University. They have also faced many hurdles, but they remain committed to seeking justice for Brendan. In Stephen's case, the appointment of Kathleen Zellner, a renowned trial lawyer, has injected new hope. Kathleen has a track record of overturning 19 wrongful convictions and is known for her thorough analysis of cases and her ability to uncover missing evidence. She quickly got to work on Stephen's case, and she firmly believes in his innocence. Stephen's previous lawyers, Dean Strang and Jerry Buting, have stepped back from the case. In August 2016, Kathleen requested that new scientific tests be conducted on evidence from the case, and she was willing to cover the costs. Her goal was to prove that Stephen was framed for the crime. She focused on 3 burn pits found at the scene, which showed signs of human remains being burned. Notably, a human pelvic bone fragment was discovered, which had been mistakenly included with Teresa's remains. This discovery suggests that Teresa's remains may have been intentionally placed in Stephen's burn pit. Unfortunately, the defense was denied the chance to examine these bones because the prosecution failed to disclose them. Kathleen claimed that this was a Brady violation, meaning that crucial evidence that could have helped exonerate Stephen was not provided in time. Despite this setback, Kathleen continued to investigate the case from a new angle, which could lead to the identification of a new suspect. Kathleen decided to investigate the Bobby family's computer as an alternative to testing the bone fragments. The computer analysis revealed several disturbing findings, including violent and pornographic images of women being tortured and videos showing women as victims. These materials were accessed at times when Bobby was supposedly at home. Furthermore, Barbara Taddick, Bobby and Brendan's mother, her husband Scott, and Stephen's sister seemed to conceal evidence to avoid implicating Bobby. The forensic team successfully recovered 2,449 pages of data from the computer, including all of Bobby's searches, videos, and photos, and transferred it to a CD-ROM as evidence for the retrial. Bobby is the older brother of Brendan and the nephew of Stephen. During his uncle Stephen's trial, Bobby served as the prosecution's key eyewitness. According to Bobby, the last time he saw Teresa, she was heading towards Stephen's house. Later that afternoon, after returning from hunting, Bobby claimed that he was unable to find Teresa or her car. Brad Dassey, the half-brother of Bobby, has made several claims that have added. He believes Stephen is innocent. Additionally, Brad has stated that Barbara and Scott erased the computer's history, including all pornographic content. A key piece of evidence could potentially clear Stephen and Brendan's names, while further implicating Bobby. An eyewitness, Thomas Sawinski, has come forward claiming to have seen Bobby with an older man pushing Teresa's SUV back into the salvage yard. Thomas stated that he was driving to deliver newspapers when he saw the duo. As he passed them, Bobby attempted to stop him by stepping into the road. Thomas swerved to avoid Bobby and continued on his route. Thomas described Bobby as appearing unhappy to see him there. After learning about the SUV's discovery, Thomas contacted police to share what he had seen. However, the police rejected this, who told him they already knew who is the culprit. New testimony has cast doubt on the credibility of the prosecution's key witness, Bobby. Kathleen believes that if Thomas's claims are true, then Bobby's entire statement is false. She argued that the rejection of key evidence supporting Stephen's case deprived him of the opportunity to prove his innocence for years. The appeals court is considering the new evidence and make a decision in November 2022. Kathleen continues to represent those she believes have been wrongfully convicted. However, throughout the process, Brendan has maintained his innocence. The question remains as to whether Stephen is truly guilty. Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat, the case of Laura Wallen. Laura Wallen was born on February 10, 1986, to parents Mark and Gwen Wallen. She grew up in Olney, Maryland, alongside her older sister Jennifer, with whom she had a very close relationship. Laura's passion was in helping others, which led her to pursue a career as a social science teacher. The investigation into her disappearance began on September 5, 2017. It was led by Montgomery County Police Chief Tom Manger. He worked alongside Laura's family and friends, as well as her students. A group of more than 20 people, led by Saquon Maxwell, a former student of Laura's, came together to spread the word about Laura's disappearance by distributing flyers throughout the neighborhood and school district. Police officers searched Laura's neighborhood, asking residents questions and keeping a close eye on the area between Howard and Montgomery County. Laura's father, Mark, made a public plea for anyone with information to come forward and help find his daughter. He wanted Laura to know they were doing everything they could to find her and they weren't going to give up. Losing a child is one of the most difficult experiences a parent can face, and Mark wanted his daughter to know that they were working hard to bring her home safely. On the evening of September 7, 2017, an employee at the Jersey Gated Complex in Columbia, Maryland, found a new clue. While rummaging through a dumpster, he found Laura's license inside a cell phone. When police arrived, they also found Laura's vehicle parked at the complex. What puzzled them was that the complex was located just across the highway from Wild Lake High School, where Laura worked. This raised questions about why Laura would have parked her car there. Police took the evidence they collected to the lab for further testing. They also looked deeper into Laura's past and spoke to people close to her. To cover more ground, the investigation team divided into two groups. One group focused on tracking Laura's online activities, while the other group interviewed her family members and her boyfriend. To gather evidence, the police searched Laura's computer and cell phone. They also thoroughly searched her car for any clues that might point to her disappearance. In addition, they carefully reviewed her financial transactions and cell phone records. As part of their inquiry, the police also spoke with Laura's parents and sister about her disappearance. Laura's father, Mark, told them that the family had planned a weekend trip together, but Laura decided to stay behind to spend time with her boyfriend, Tyler. This was confirmed by her sister, Jennifer, who told police that Laura was expecting Tyler to propose to her during their time together. Police also obtained a text message conversation between Jennifer and Laura from the same weekend. Jennifer received messages from Laura stating that she and Tyler had plans for a countryside adventure on Saturday, September 2, 2017. Mark mentioned that Tyler had expressed his intention to marry Laura after learning of her pregnancy. However, on Monday morning, September 4, 2017, Laura sent Jennifer a concerning text message claiming the baby was not Tyler's, but rather her ex-boyfriend Antoine's. Jennifer found this suspicious, as Laura hadn't seen Antoine in over 2 years. She also noted that Laura had misspelled Antoine's name. When Jennifer tried to contact Laura, she received no response. Upon returning home on Monday evening, the family discovered that Laura was missing, leaving behind burning candles and her pet dog locked inside. The family suggested questioning Tyler, as he was the last person to see Laura. Tyler spoke with police and shared details of his weekend with Laura. He explained that he took her to Damascus, Maryland, to view a property he was interested in buying as a home for their future family. Laura seems excited about the idea of starting a family in the countryside. However, when they returned to Olney the following day, Sunday, September 3, 2017, the atmosphere had changed. According to Tyler, Laura was not as happy as she had been the day before. He revealed that they had an argument in Damascus, but he declined to elaborate on the disagreement. Tyler told police that when they returned to Laura's house, she asked him to return his set of keys. He agreed, not wanting to upset her further due to her pregnancy. They had planned to meet at the Columbia Mall on the morning of Monday, September 4, 2017, for breakfast and to discuss their issues, but Laura did not show up. When Tyler visited her house, there was no sign of her. Tyler initially told the police that he was unable to enter Laura's home because he didn't have a key, However, this statement was false. The neighbors reported seeing Tyler walking Laura's dog on Monday, September 4th, at 2:30 p.m., which directly contradicted Tyler's claim. This raised a question for the police. If Tyler didn't have a key, how was he able to enter the home to take the dog for a walk? As police dug deeper, their suspicions about Tyler grew. They asked for and received permission to review his phone records. They also secretly placed a tracking device on his vehicle to monitor his movements. During this time, the police continued to search for Laura, fearing the worst but they hoping for the best and that she would return safely. The investigation uncovered some crucial information. A debit card transaction on September 2, 2017, revealed that Laura had made a purchase at a Safeway store. Surveillance footage confirmed that Tyler and Laura were together that evening. Analysis of their phone records showed that both their phones were in the same locations from that Saturday evening, but on Sunday, Laura's phone suddenly stopped moving. This finding, combined with the tracking device revealing Tyler's frequent visits to a field in Damascus, continues to imply Tyler is involved in Laura's disappearance. Tyler's phone records showed that he had texted a friend on Sunday evening, asking for a ride to help clean up a mess, but the friend declined. Further investigation revealed that both Tyler's and Laura's fingerprints were found on her vehicle, cell phone, and license, which were discovered in a dumpster in Colombia. This new evidence led police to bring Tyler in for additional questioning. Police asked Tyler about his involvement with Laura's cell phone and the presence of his fingerprints on her belongings. They also inquired about the cryptic message he had sent to his friend. In response, Tyler changed his story. He claimed that Laura was in trouble because she was pregnant by someone else, not him. He alleged that Laura had an affair with a student, which resulted in her pregnancy. Tyler's statement to the police was startling. He explained that he had taken Laura's car, license, and phone, and discarded them at the complex, an attempt to give her a head start to escape her problems before her family found out. His intention, he claimed, was to buy her some time to sort out her issues. He acknowledged trying to mislead everyone, including the police, in order to protect her because he cared about her. However, when police asked Tyler about Laura's current location, he denied knowing where she is now. But the police were not convinced by his story. Unbeknownst to Tyler, investigators had already discovered other messages on his phone, which painted a different picture of his relationship with Laura. A closer look at his phone revealed, they discover that Tyler has been texting with other women. It turns out Laura isn't his only girlfriend. As the police dug deeper, they discovered that Tyler and Laura had a troubled 10-year relationship. This new information was sparked from Laura's father, Mark, who had always felt uneasy about Tyler. According to Mark, Tyler had never made an effort to be with Laura on important occasions, such as holidays and birthdays, which made him question Tyler's commitment to his daughter. What's more, Mark knew that Tyler was also dating another woman, Christina Wagner, who was a teacher like Laura. Further investigation led the police to friends of both Tyler and Christina. They revealed that Tyler had been leading a double life. It turned out that Tyler had met Christina in 2012 and had been living with her while still in a relationship with Laura. Friends of they told police that Christina and Tyler had gotten engaged and were planning to get married in 2018. When asked about Laura, Tyler's friends claimed that she had become aggressive and that Tyler was trying to distance himself from her. Police found text messages on Laura's phone that showed she had tried to contact Christina on August 28, 2017. In the messages, Laura expressed her desire to meet Christina to talk about Tyler. Friends claimed Christina was angry at Laura's bold actions and Christina confronted Tyler about it. Christina decided to file a police complaint. However, when police told Christina, Laura, and Tyler would have to go to court to get a restraining order, Tyler changed his mind and withdrew. Investigation revealed that Christina and Tyler had planned to spend the Labor Day weekend shopping for their wedding, but Tyler couldn't make it due to a knee injury. When police told Laura's family about Christina, they shared with officers what Laura had confided in them, that Tyler was being stalked by Christina. This new information made it more likely that Tyler could be a suspect in Laura's disappearance. Police brought Tyler in for questioning again, this time confronting him about Christina. Initially, he denied any involvement with her, but police were able to challenge his claim with evidence of his secret life. Eventually, Tyler admitted to cheating on both women, which had led to his fight with Laura. When investigators spoke with Tyler, he expressed his desire to mend his relationship with Laura. However, when asked about Laura's disappearance, he maintained that he was not involved. Unbeknownst to Tyler, the police discovered a connection between him and a vacant field in Damascus through his phone records. They found a link to a meat processing plant called KS Cuts, which was adjacent to the property that Tyler had visited with Laura. The plant's owner also owned the field they had visited. Interviews with the owner revealed that Tyler had previously worked for him and often helped him hunt on the property. Further questioning led to a disturbing discovery. Over the Labor Day weekend, Tyler had requested access to the safe on the owner's property, which contained 420 caliber rifles with ammunition. This new information led police to suspect that Laura may have been killed, but they could not confront Tyler yet. They still needed to find Laura and gather evidence to prove their suspicions correct. Laura's family, along with the police, devised a plan to try to get Tyler to reveal Laura's location. On September 11, 2017, Tyler joined Laura's parents, Mark and Gwen, at a press conference to appeal for Laura's safe return. However, this plan was set up as a trap. The police and Laura's family were hoping Tyler would make a mistake and reveal information about Laura's whereabouts. Meanwhile, police officers and cadaver dogs searched the fields near the meat processing plant in Damascus. During the press conference, Tyler made an emotional appeal for Laura's safe return. In his speech, he hinted that Laura shouldn't be ashamed of anything she'd done wrong. Tyler's speech included the following words: "Laura, if you're listening, it doesn't matter what happened. It doesn't matter what trouble you're in. We're going to fix it together, you, me, and your family. There are so many people who miss you, who are looking for you, and who are praying for your safety. We don't sleep or eat, we just pray that you're safe. I ask you to let us know that you're safe." Tyler claimed to be worried about Laura's disappearance, but what he didn't know was that he was the main suspect in the case. At the time, he seemed genuinely concerned, saying he was doing everything he could to find Laura and praying for her safe return. However, the situation took a devastating turn on September 13, 2017, just 2 days after the press conference. A secluded area of a field was identified as the location of Laura Wallen's body after K-9 dogs detected something suspicious. Upon further investigation, detectives discovered a freshly dug grave and recovered Laura's body at 5:30 p.m. The police were able to identify the body by matching the clothes Laura was wearing to a picture Jennifer had shown them from her last conversation with Laura. The discovery marked a tragic end to the desperate search for Laura. Laura Wallen, a highly respected teacher at Wild Lake High School and recent Teacher of the Year, tragically passed. The incident occurred around noon. Unfortunately, her unborn child also did not survive. The same day, Tyler Tessier, Laura's boyfriend, was arrested and charged with her murder. Tyler held at the county jail while investigators awaited the initial autopsy report. The report confirmed that Laura had been shot in the back of the head before being buried in the field. When Tyler was confronted with evidence, he created a false story. He claimed that on Sunday evening, he and Laura were at her house when a group of African American men burst in, took them hostage at gunpoint, and drove them to Damascus. According to Tyler, the men spared his life but shot Laura in the head, forcing him to bury her in a field. They threatened to harm him if he revealed their identities or led the police to Laura's body. However, police did not believe this story because they knew the relationship between Tyler and the property owner. Tyler then changed his story, claiming that he and Laura had an argument, which ended with him pushing her, causing her to fall, hit her head. He assumed she had died and buried her in the field to hide her body. Later, Tyler claimed that he had reconsidered and thought Laura might still be alive. To end her suffering, he dug up the grave, shot her in the head, and covered his tracks. He described this as a mercy killing. Tyler was held without bail at the Montgomery County Detention Center. Laura and her unborn son, baby Reed, were laid to rest in a public cemetery on September 30, 2017. Over 1,000 people, including Laura's family, friends, and students, attended the funeral to pay their respects to the beloved teacher. The prosecution, led by Montgomery County State Attorney John McCarthy, was building its case against Tyler. As they investigated, they developed a theory about Tyler's double life. They believed that Tyler was willing to continue living a secret life until Laura discovered his relationship with Christina. Fearing his deception would be exposed, Tyler began planning to kill Laura so he could continue his life with Christina. Tyler saw Labor Day weekend as the perfect opportunity to carry out his plan. With Christina out of town and Laura's family away, no one would be able to ask him about Laura's whereabouts until the weekend was over, giving him time to come up with an alibi. He chose a location he was familiar with, where he knew he could access the necessary equipment through a friend. The area was also isolated, making it unlikely that anyone would think to look for Laura there. Tyler fabricated a story about Laura's infidelity to throw her family and investigators off his trail. He deliberately left her car and belongings near her workplace, tried to create false evidence that she had run away because of a scandalous affair. However, Tyler made critical mistakes, constantly changing his alibi, which raised suspicions among the police from the start. Moreover, Tyler underestimated Laura's family, who had noticed that his relationship with Laura was unusual from the beginning. They felt that he never had the responsibility to her as a real-life partner. The prosecution had built a strong case against Tyler, presenting a convincing argument. However, Maryland law only allowed Tyler to be charged with Laura's murder. The death of her unborn child was not considered a separate crime under Maryland law, and this decision would be disputed during Tyler's trial in September 2018. On September 6, 2018, the pursuit of justice for Laura Wallen and her unborn son, baby Reed, came to an abrupt end. Tyler Tessier, the individual responsible for their deaths, was found hanging in his jail cell around 5 a.m. He had been allowed to shower and have breakfast before taking his own life. The news was a devastating blow to Laura's family, who had been seeking justice for their loved ones. They remembered Laura as a bright and loving person. According to reports, Tyler had written 5 letters indicating that he had planned to take his own life for some time. Laura's family did not get to see Tyler brought to justice. Laura's mother, when described Tyler as a diabolical human, and expressed relief that her family no longer had to worry about him being a part of their society. The case of Laura's murder is a tragedy that will leave many people questioning the nature of evil. It's heartbreaking that Laura and her unborn child were killed by the man she loved and trusted, who had promised her a happy future together. This case serves as a reminder that sometimes, the people we trust the most can be the ones who harm us the most. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of EMT Corgan. Ashley Harmon was a vibrant and intelligent individual. However, her parents' divorce when she was 9 years old marked the beginning of a challenging period in her life. During this time, Ashley took on a maternal role, caring for and protecting her 5 siblings. Faith is the foundation of her life. As a devoted member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Ashley found strength and comfort in her relationship with God. Whenever she faced adversity, her faith provided her with the resilience to persevere. Ashley's unwavering commitment to her faith gave her the courage to overcome obstacles and difficult situations head-on. In 2003, while studying human development at Utah State, Ashley met EMT Corgan, a philosophy student. Emmett, like Ashley, had experienced the pain of parental separation, having gone through a similar experience at the age of 10. He, too, found solace in the Mormon faith. Emmett was 17 years old when he was baptized into the Church of Jesus Christ and the Latter-day Saints, surrounded by his loved ones. Around that time, Ashley caught his eye, and he was immediately drawn to her intelligence. Emmett confided in his close friends that he was certain Ashley was the one he wanted to spend the rest of his life with. As their relationship blossomed, Emmett proposed to Ashley during the 2008 Christmas season, just a few months after they met. Overjoyed, Ashley said yes, and they began making wedding plans. The couple exchanged vows in a Mormon temple, a ceremony that reflected their shared values. Their marriage brought joy and stability to their lives. In the Mormon faith, marriage is deeply revered as a sacred and eternal bond between two people. Mormons believe that this bond transcends mortality, continuing even after death. Divorce is discouraged but allowed in exceptional cases. In 2005, Ashley and Emmett welcomed twin daughters, marking the beginning of their parenthood journey. They were ecstatic to take on their new roles. Emmett cherished every moment spent with the girls, embracing fatherhood. Ashley was thrilled to be living her dream life. While attending Utah State University, the couple managed to balance childcare and educational responsibilities. Despite challenges, their faith and love helped them overcome obstacles. They persevered, striving for a better future. By 2009, Emmett graduated with high honors, then attended law school and passed the bar exam. He pursued a career as an attorney. Meanwhile, Ashley focused on raising their growing family, dedicating herself to household management and childcare for their 4 children. The Corgan family appeared to have a perfect life to outsiders. They resided in a lovely home with multiple children, and Emmett had a rewarding career. However, their situation wasn't as ideal as it seemed. By August 2010, Emmett felt increasingly pressured to support his family financially, particularly with 4 young children under the age of 5. To solve this problem, he decided to start his own business, focusing on working as a criminal defense lawyer. A friend introduced Emmett to Candy Hall, a well-regarded paralegal with experience working for a criminal attorney. After a successful lunch meeting, Emmett hired Candy to work at his firm. At the time, Candy was married to Robert Hall, who was widely regarded as a devoted father and diligent worker. When Candy started working for EMT Corgan, she was initially excited, and her family was happy for her. However, as time passed, Emmett's wife, Ashley, began to notice that their marriage was changing. Emmett was under a lot of stress. To cope with the stress, Emmett started spending more time at the gym, which became an addiction for him. He went to the gym regularly, leaving Ashley alone to take care of the children. Despite the growing distance between them, Ashley and Emmett welcomed their 5th child, a son, on January 15, 2011. However, Emmett's behavior changed even more after the birth of their son. He began spending more time away from home, sometimes staying out overnight. Ashley became concerned about Emmett's activities and confided in her sister that she feared he might be cheating on her. Meanwhile, Candy, Emmett's assistant, was also experiencing problems in her marriage. Her husband, Robert, was jealous of her working for a young and charismatic man like Emmett, which led to constant fighting and took a toll on their marriage. On March 6, 2011, Ashley and Emmett's 7th wedding anniversary had arrived, but Emmett was absent, claiming he had to attend a bodybuilding convention. Ashley was left alone with the children, feeling anxious about their marriage. She wondered if she was to blame for Emmett's unhappiness. Determined to improve things, she pushed on, as divorce wasn't an option. Ashley chose to address the issue directly. A few days later, on March 11th, she spent the entire day planning the perfect evening to reconnect with Emmett. She prepared his favorite meal, cleaned the house, and made sure the children behaved. At 6 p.m., Ashley had the table set, ready to greet him warmly. However, Emmett didn't arrive until 2 hours later. When Ashley approached him with a kiss, he turned away, further straining their relationship. Despite Emmett's cold demeanor and the growing distance between them, Ashley remained determined to rekindle their love. She believed their relationship was worth fighting for and was willing to do whatever it took to repair it. The family gathered around the table to eat. However, Emmett claimed he wasn't hungry, which was disappointing and hurtful to Ashley. As the rest of the family enjoyed their dinner, Emmett got up, saying he needed to go to Walgreens, but Ashley sensed something was wrong and asked him to stay. Emmett responded harshly and left, leaving Ashley feeling confused and hurt. Meanwhile, Emmett's assistant, Candy, was dealing with her own marital problems. Her husband, Robert, had decided to leave their home after their marriage reached a breaking point. Despite their love for each other, Robert believed it was best to start fresh and move on. That evening, Robert phoned his daughter to check if she was using Candy's car. She told him she wasn't. A few minutes later, while driving past Walgreens, she spotted her mother's car in the parking lot. She didn't think much of it and immediately called her father to let him know. Robert responded casually with, "Oh, okay." Unbeknownst to them, this ordinary-sounding conversation would have a profound impact on two families' lives forever. Ashley lay in bed, overcome with worry about her marriage. Despite her frantic texts and calls, Emmett remained unreachable. A nagging feeling in her gut left her uneasy. Around 1 p.m., a 911 call reported gunshots and a screaming woman in a Walgreens parking lot, prompting a swift police response. Upon arrival, the first officer was met with a disturbing scene, a lifeless man on the ground and a wounded person clutching their head in pain. Police sought to speak with Candy Hall, who was present at the scene. She identified the wounded person as her husband, Robert, and the deceased as her boss, Emmett. Emmett had suffered fatal gunshot wounds to the head and chest. Shortly after his body was discovered, Ashley was awakened by a knock on the door from the police. Ashley was stunned and inconsolable, unable to comprehend the events that led to this tragedy. After the police informed Ashley of her husband's death, a detective inquired if she was familiar with Robert and Candy Hall. Ashley stated that she knew Candy as Emmett's assistant but suspected an affair between Candy and Emmett. The police took Candy Hall from the Walgreens parking lot for questioning to piece together the events leading to Emmett's death and Robert's head injury. During the interrogation, detectives asked Candy if she had a romantic relationship with her boss, Emmett. She denied it, also refuting any intimate encounters between them. Candy claimed she went to Walgreens that night to collect a prescription and coincidentally met Emmett. After that, she and Emmett decided to take a drive. While driving to a gas station, Candy received a call from her estranged husband, Robert. She told him she was with Emmett, which led to Robert expressing jealousy and making a threat against Emmett. Candy and Emmett arrived at Walgreens after what felt like an eternity. As they stepped out of the car, Candy saw Robert standing at the entrance. He looked visibly angry. An intense argument broke out between Robert and Emmett, leading to a physical fight. Then, 3 shots were fired, and both men fell to the ground. Candy saw the gun, picked it up, and threw it aside. When questioned by detectives, Candy claimed she didn't know who fired first. After Robert received treatment for his superficial gunshot wound, detectives interviewed him. They told Robert they found a gun at the scene and asked him who it belonged to. Robert admitted the gun was his and explained that it fell from his pocket during the fight with Emmett in the parking lot. Robert alleged that Emmett dove for the gun, triggering a struggle, and Emmett shot him in the head. However, Robert couldn't recall who shot Emmett during the struggle. Given Robert's head wound, detectives weren't surprised by his hazy memory. Nevertheless, they wondered if Emmett was indeed the one who fired first, considering he was the one who ended up dead. To investigate the shooting in the Walgreens parking lot, detectives reviewed the security footage. At 9:55 p.m., Robert Hall arrived in the parking lot. A minute later, he entered the Walgreens store and quickly moved through each aisle, appearing to look for someone. He left the store at 10:06 p.m. and parked his car next to Candy's, waiting there for a few minutes. About 10 minutes later, Emmett's truck entered the parking lot. However, the actual shooting was not captured on camera. Candy, Emmett's assistant, initially denied being in a romantic relationship with Emmett. However, their co-workers suspected otherwise. Co-workers reported seeing Candy and Emmett spending a lot of time together in Emmett's office with the door closed. 3 weeks after Candy was hired, on the day Emmett was shot, detectives discovered that Emmett had accompanied Candy to the public defender's office to discuss her divorce from Robert. During the investigation into Emmett's murder, crime scene investigators searched Emmett's vehicle and found steroids in the glove compartment. This discovery didn't surprise Emmett's loved ones. When Candy gave her statement, she described a shot cadence that led detectives to believe Robert shot Emmett twice before shooting himself in the head. Based on this evidence, detectives obtained an arrest warrant for Robert Hall, charging him with first-degree murder. Robert Hall was arrested and charged with Emmett's murder. The consequences of Robert Hall's actions were severe, with a possible conviction of first-degree murder carrying a sentence of either life in prison without parole or the death penalty. Prosecutors argued that Robert Hall was driven by anger towards Emmett, who had been having an affair with Robert's wife, Candy. They alleged that this anger led Robert to shoot Emmett and then attempt to take his own life. In contrast, Robert's defense team presented a different scenario. They claimed that Emmett, who had a history of steroid abuse, was the aggressor on the night of his death. According to the defense, Emmett managed to get hold of Robert's gun during the altercation and shot Robert first. Robert then regained control of the gun and killed Emmett in self-defense. Candy Hall, Robert's wife, was a key witness in the trial. Her testimony differed slightly from her initial statement to the police. On the witness stand, Candy described hearing a single pop, followed by 2 rapid pops, rather than the initial 2 shots and then a third. This revised testimony supported the defense's argument that Emmett had shot Robert first, and that Robert had then shot Emmett twice, resulting in his death. To prove that Robert was the shooter in the Walgreens parking lot, prosecutors presented forensic evidence about the type of weapon used. This evidence showed that the weapon accumulates a large amount of gunshot residue, GSR, after being fired. After the shooting, investigators tested Robert and Emmett for gunshot residue. The test found 32 gunshot residue particles on Robert's left palm and 23 on his right. In contrast, Emmett had only 1 particle on his left hand and none on his right. These results strongly suggested that Robert fired the gun, not Emmett. After a thorough review, the jury delivered a verdict of not guilty of first-degree murder for Robert Hall. However, they unanimously agreed that he was guilty of second-degree murder, indicating that the murder was not premeditated. As a result, Robert was sentenced to 30 years in prison by the presiding judge. He will be eligible for parole in 2028 at the age of 58. Despite being convicted, Robert has consistently maintained his innocence and appealed the verdict. In 2021, the Idaho Supreme Court reaffirmed his conviction, denying his request for a retrial. Ashley struggled to cope with the fact that her husband, Emmett, was murdered by the husband of his lover, Candy Hall. In a 2015 Dr. Phil interview, Ashley met Candy face-to-face for the first time. Despite the emotional pain, Ashley was determined to move forward. She closed the book on her old life and started anew by moving out of the town where she and Emmett raised their 5 children. As time passed, the children adjusted to the change and started to find happiness again. Ashley eventually remarried and had 2 more children. She currently blogs to support trauma victims. Hi there, investigators. It's time to uncover the truth behind another case. The case of Zara Alina. Zara Alina was born in England in the winter of 1986. As the eldest of 5 children, Zara's birth held great significance, symbolizing her mother's aspirations for a better future. Additionally, she was the first granddaughter of Rosam, a distinction that earned her special respect and status within the family. Growing up, Zara was doted on by her relatives and raised in a multi-generational household. Despite their financial struggles, Zara's parents prioritized her education, believing it would provide her with a good life. Zara's family had big plans for her future, but their hopes were overshadowed by the dangers and difficulties that surrounded them, putting Zara's safety at risk. Zara had an unrelenting passion and thirst for life from a very young age. This led her to develop a love for tap dancing, a form of self-expression where each step brought out a rhythm that evoked a sense of harmony. Additionally, and swimming, which gave her a sense of freedom from the monotony of daily life. Her exquisite style and artistic approach to fashion allowed her to express her dreams through her outfits. However, these pursuits were just the beginning of her journey. Her first experience with skating ignited a new sense of freedom within her. Skating evolved into more than just a hobby for her. It became a powerful outlet for self-expression, allowing her to connect with her deepest emotions and inner self. Those close to Zara were unsurprised when she shared her aspiration to become a lawyer, driven by a desire to protect and support others. Her warm personality spread happiness and positivity, making those around her feel uplifted and inspired. Zara's eyes sparkled, and her gaze was captivating. Her curly black hair added to her striking appearance. She has a magnetic appeal, combining qualities such as passion, kindness, and courage, along with undeniable charm. As a teenager, she had the chance to explore England, visiting museums and galleries that fueled her interest in art and culture. Her travels showcased independence and unrelenting passion for knowledge and discovery. Following her initial trips, she later traveled to other parts of Europe. These adventures show that she inherited her family's passion for discovery and exploration of new things. Zara's aunt, Farah, was a significant influence on her. Unlike many others who chose to settle in the UK, Farah settled in Portugal. What captivated Zara was her aunt's work as a psychotherapist, particularly her involvement with women's organizations. As a result, Zara made it a point to visit her aunt on multiple occasions. Zara began turning her dreams into a reality when she earned admission to the University of Westminster immediately after high school graduation. She dedicated herself to pursuing her objectives, all while taking care of her mother and grandmother at the same time. Although she was short, she had endless energy and a deeply passionate personality. Zara is a compassionate person who has positively impacted the lives of many refugees forced to flee their homes due to conflict, she using her influence to speak out about their stories. She also volunteered at community canteens, aiding the homeless. Zara has a remarkable talent for understanding what others need, and she always makes time for them a priority in her busy schedule. Her easygoing personality made her a delight to be around. She frequently visited her aunt, Smee Naz, who lived nearby, often seeking her help with exam preparation, but their study sessions inevitably turned into laughter-filled moments. Those who knew Zara remember that she brought happiness wherever she went. Moreover, she was diligent, covering her own expenses and providing support to her family. Zara was a familiar face at a local clothing store, where she worked and interacted with everyone in the community, from teenagers to the elderly. Her kindness and willingness to help others were notable traits. Despite being talkative, she was a good listener and extended her generosity to all living beings, especially cats. She would often spend her own money to care for stray cats, taking them to the vet or convincing neighbors to adopt them. Zara's friend, Sanji Naira, described her as radiant and thought that her most significant gift was her ability to share optimism with others. Whenever Sanji was down, he would turn to Zara for help. Zara had a special person in her life, Teresa Peters, who was more than just a friend. They formed a strong bond as they fought together for justice and women's rights, a common goal that forged a lasting friendship despite life's obstacles. They felt a strong sense of comfort and familiarity in each other's homes and maintained a daily phone routine, using this time to share news, discuss their thoughts, and make plans for the future. After passing her exams and completing her law internship in 2002, Zara had the opportunity to work at the Crown Prosecution Service. This was a significant step toward realizing her dream of becoming a full-fledged lawyer. To achieve this, Zara persevered with her work despite facing many difficulties, including worries from her mother and grandmother, as well as financial struggles. This achievement was significant for her and for the people who believed in, supported her through the challenges she faced on her path to a better life. On her first day at the new job, Zara felt an overwhelming sense of happiness. She shared a smiley selfie with friends and family, as if announcing the start of a new chapter in her life to the world. This new job was the final piece in the puzzle of her dreams, a culmination of years of hard work. Although being an administrator might seem like a secondary role to some, it was a significant milestone for Zara. At 35 years old, she entered a new phase of her life, which sparked in her a sense of excitement and determination that filled her with a clear direction and goal. This wasn't just another working day. It marked the beginning of a new era in her life, one where she felt truly fulfilled and happy. The new job boosted Zara's confidence, and she felt it was time to start her own family. She envisioned her children living happy, protected lives filled with love and harmony. With each passing day, Zara saw herself moving closer to her dream of having a family. Her life was busy with work, volunteering, friends, and support from her mother and grandmother, who shared her home and provided care when needed. Despite her packed schedule, Zara enjoyed walking and valued her freedom of movement. She didn't let small things hold her back and would often carry a spare pair of shoes in her bag to change into sneakers when needed. Zara believed that women should be able to move freely without any obstacles or restrictions. However, a man named Jordan McSweeney, who lived nearby, posed a threat to Zara's freedom. Jordan was a few years younger than Zara, and his origins were unknown. One Saturday evening, after the sun had set, Zara was on her way to meet a friend. Despite not being in the mood, but she chose not to cancel, honoring her commitment. Zara was recognized for being extremely reliable and keeping her commitments, especially to her friends. Before leaving, she called Aunt Farah, but this time, a hint of anxiety crept into her voice. Aunt Farah cautioned Zara to be careful, and although she wasn't venturing far from home, the evening atmosphere felt unusual and unpredictable. Zara assured herself that she was familiar with every part of the city and that people knew who she was. Nevertheless, something about this evening unsettled her, making her heart beat faster, and she decided to exercise extra caution. Zara met her friend at the Ilford Big Spoon, a local bar on London's West End, at the scheduled time. Ilford in London is a vibrant and culturally diverse neighborhood ideal for evening meals and socializing. One Saturday evening, Zara and her friend came to this area. They then headed to another bar, where Zara had a couple of glasses of water. Meanwhile, Jordan was at a nearby nightclub, having one drink after another. As he drank, an idea formed in his mind, and he decided to act on it. He was determined to find a woman to attack that night. Security cameras captured Jordan's behavior at the club's entrance, where he would hug and try to kiss women without their consent. He was particularly aggressive with one employee, despite her clear discomfort. Eventually, he was kicked out of the club around 11 p.m., and his behavior was recorded on camera. After leaving the club, cameras continued to capture Jordan's actions as he walked down Romford Street towards the park. As Jordan walked, he spotted a woman and began to follow her. Jordan approached her, and she tried to avoid him by entering a store. However, Jordan waited for her outside, and when she left the store, he followed her again. He then crossed the street, keeping her in sight. When the woman entered her house, Jordan was forced to continue on his way. According to security footage, around 2 a.m. on Cranbrook Street, Jordan noticed another woman approaching him. Suddenly, Jordan quickened his pace, approaching a woman. However, two passing witnesses noticed his suspicious behavior, which was captured on video. Despite this, the woman managed to return home safely, leaving Jordan surprised and frustrated. He then returned to Cranbrook Street, having been unsuccessful. Around the same time, Zara and her friend decided to leave the bar and head home. It was 2 a.m. Her friend took a taxi, but Zara chose to walk, given the short distance and pleasant weather. As they parted ways, Zara began walking down Cranbrook Street, a residential area just a 10-minute walk from her house. It was then that Jordan spotted her. According to Chief Inspector Dave Williams, Jordan had a clear intention that night to attack a woman, regardless of the location. Cranbrook Street remained busy, even in the early hours, with a steady flow of traffic. Jordan had a history of offenses dating back to 2006 to 2009, for which he was sentenced in a Kent juvenile court at the age of 13. In August 2010, at the age of 17, he was found guilty of assaulting a girl, causing her to suffer a swollen eye. He received a 4-month detention and correction period as a result. 11 years after his initial offense, Jordan committed another crime against a woman, resulting in a 3-year ban from approaching her, either directly or indirectly. By 2010, he had a total of 28 convictions for 69 different offenses. These offenses included theft, assault on both police officers and the general public, motor vehicle theft, traffic infractions, committing crimes while out on bail, and shoplifting. Jordan used a social media platform to boast about his extensive collection of weapons and glorify a life of crime. He shared various photos and quotes, as well as fake images claiming the FBI was searching for him. After being imprisoned for crimes including criminal damage, racially aggravated harassment, and carrying a bladed weapon, Jordan was released on parole on June 17, 2022. One of the conditions of his parole was to regularly meet with his assigned parole officer. Following his release, Jordan resided in a van on St. Valentine Street, located in a 130-acre park in the Gun Hill area of London's Redbridge district, the largest green space in the region. Jordan broke all the rules of his parole and missed 2 scheduled meetings with his parole officer. As a result, the authorities decided not to show him any mercy. On June 22, 2022, the parole service started the process to send Jordan back to prison, but they didn't notify the police until 2 days later. On the morning of Saturday, June 25, 2022, police went to his mother's house to arrest him, only to find he was not there. In the early hours of June 26, 2022, a horrific crime occurred in Ilford. Zara was discovered on the sidewalk, displaying signs of abuse, with her belongings scattered around her. Her body showed evidence of severe injuries, her clothes were torn, and her eyes indicated a desperate struggle for survival. A passerby immediately recognized the gravity of the situation and began administering chest compressions and CPR in an attempt to save Zara's life. Despite the efforts of passers-by and emergency medical responders, Zara's injuries proved too severe. She fought for her life but ultimately passing away at 9:58 a.m. on Sunday. At approximately 11 a.m., security cameras in the park captured Jordan disposing of evidence, including his clothes, with an air of indifference and calmness. This behavior suggested that the act of violence was premeditated rather than random. The police swiftly responded and visited Zara's grandmother, asking her to identify her granddaughter from video footage taken at the bar. Upon confirmation of Zara's identity, the police informed her grandmother about the incident. Zara's uncle Qasim then contacted other family members, including Aunt Farah in Portugal, to break the news. Farah recalled receiving the distressing call on Saturday night, which prompted her to immediately travel to London. The family was deeply shocked and struggling to cope with the intense sadness of Zara's passing. Concurrently, detectives initiated an investigation in the area where Zara's body was found. They began by gathering footage from surveillance cameras to reconstruct the attacker's movements. The combination of video evidence and bloody fingerprints discovered near the crime scene enabled the identification of Jordan as the primary suspect. Utilizing a video surveillance system, the police tracked Jordan's location and obtained images of him. Inspector Dave dispatched an officer to Gun Hill to verify if anyone recognized Jordan. The operation yielded swift results, as Jordan was found sleeping in his van shortly thereafter. The authorities immediately arrested Jordan, who was found with blood-stained clothes and shoes that he was trying to dispose of. Despite lengthy interrogations, he refused to speak or reveal any information about himself. Meanwhile, new video footage emerged, allowing police to piece together the incident surrounding the crime. The incident led parole officer Justin Russell to criticize the handling of Jordan's case, highlighting a series of errors. Jordan has a criminal history dating back to the age of 16 and has been in prison several times, making him a subject at high risk of committing a crime. After being released from detention, he missed several scheduled supervision appointments. Authorities failed to take prompt action to return him to prison. Zara's family described the last few days as incredibly shocking, acknowledging that their loss was irreparable. However, in the face of such grief, they were touched by the warmth and kindness people have shown. The family faced a significant amount of work and needed to find the strength to cope. Aunt Farah took charge of communicating with the media and meeting with the police. Even though they were dealing with their own shock and grief, the family understood that taking control of the situation was crucial to protect Zara from possible accusations by some media outlets. A preliminary hearing for the Jordan case occurred on July 1, 2022. A subsequent hearing was scheduled for September 30, 2022, to prepare testimonies for the trial. However, the trial was postponed because Jordan did not appear on the scheduled day. On July 2, a memorial service was held for Zara, organized by her family. The service took place along the route Zara would have taken home, representing her final, unfinished journey. Many attendees wore white to symbolize a silent walk. Over 120 organizations that specialize in supporting women attended, showing solidarity in the fight against violence. These organizations collaborated with Zara Alina's family and publicly pushed for justice and accountability. They stressed that it's crucial to address violence against women and stopping perpetrators from committing such acts. During a preliminary hearing at East London Court in Walthamstow, crime scene investigator Nadia Persat testified. She stated that local police officers could have done more to locate Jordan before he attacked Zara. Persat believes the jury should investigate this matter further. On November 16, 2022, Jordan failed to appear at the hearing, despite being informed that his attendance was mandatory. As a result, a video call was arranged, during which he pleaded guilty. Prosecutor Oliver Glasgow argued that Jordan would be unfit for bail, and Judge Chima Grave agreed. The judge postponed the verdict until December 14 of the same year. However, as that date approached, Jordan failed to appear in court. Despite his absence, Jordan was eventually convicted and sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 33 years for the murder of Zara Alina. Jordan and his representatives appealed the sentence, which was subsequently reduced to 33 years in prison. The judge took into account that Zara was unconscious at the time of her death and therefore did not experience any suffering, which was a key factor in the decision to reduce the sentence. For months after the incident, it was revealed that Jordan had a personal relationship with a 32-year-old woman who worked at the Belmarsh Correctional Facility in South London. The woman, who was not a direct employee of the prison services but worked at the facility, was arrested and investigated for suspected misconduct in a public office. Zara Alina's family still fondly remembers her with love and pride. Her aunt, Farah, continues to advocate against violence towards women and girls. In March 2023, Farah participated in a march organized by various groups to raise awareness about the issue. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Juan Carlos Garcia. Abril Perez was born on November 18, 1971 in Monterrey, Mexico. She is the second of 3 children. Her parents, Maria and Manuel, did their best to provide their children with a good education and aspirations for a better life. Together with her brother Javier and sister Ana, Abril's family lived a simple but hopeful life. Abril, Ana, and Javier all excelled in school, participating in musical activities, sports, and developing their talents. However, Abril showed early on a special ability in mathematics and business skills. She was an avid reader and was always the best student in her class. As a teenager, Abril started working to become financially independent, saving and always having savings from her school days. She was very disciplined, able to plan and manage her time effectively. Her goal was to get a quality college education to secure a well-paying job with plenty of career advancement opportunities. After graduating from high school, Abril was accepted into the most prestigious university in Nuevo Leon, where she earned a master's degree in finance and business administration. Her classmates described her as smart, focused, and ambitious, but also fun-loving, kind, and always ready to help others. After graduating, Abril was hired into the sales department of one of the largest and fastest-growing companies in the country. A few years later, she tried her hand at digital sales, a new and rapidly growing field, and realized it was the right fit for her. She quickly rose through the ranks, becoming the company's CEO within 2 years. Abril was young, beautiful, successful, ambitious, and on her way to the life she had always dreamed of. She built a brilliant career, provided for her family, and had many plans for the future. However, her personal life remained unstable, disappointing her loved ones. Abril believed that she would find true love and live a long, happy life. In the mid-1990s, when Abril's career was going strong, she met a young man named Juan Carlos Garcia Sanchez. A little over 3 years older than Abril, he had similar career ambitions to hers, which impressed her. In turn, he was attracted to her beauty, charm, kindness, radiant smile, along with her sharp intellect and strong determination. Juan Carlos graduated from a prestigious University of Science and Technology, where he excelled in the fields of economics and commerce. He then went on to study at Harvard University in the United States before returning to Mexico and building a successful career in the rapidly growing e-commerce sector. After meeting at a conference focused on the latest financial technologies, Abril and Juan Carlos met several more times as their companies worked on joint projects. Eventually, Juan Carlos realized that he had fallen in love with this intelligent and beautiful woman. Juan got Abril's phone number through mutual acquaintances, called Abril, and asked her out. Initially, they were both attracted to each other. Abril found Juan intelligent and energetic, able to chat about any topic. The relationship between the two developed rapidly, and by 1998, they decided to get married. At that time, Both had achieved considerable success in their careers and were involved in developing online stores, a promising direction. Their life was like a real fairy tale, attracting the envy and admiration of those around them. After 3 years of marriage, they welcomed their first child, a daughter named Anna Cecilia, in 2001. At that time, Abril was 30 years old and she was extremely happy because the birth of the child marked a new chapter in their lives. Her husband also seemed happy and loved their newborn daughter. 2 years later, Abril gave birth to a son named Juan Carlos Jr. And 2 years later, the family welcomed a third child, a boy named Julio Andreas. Abril is a hardworking, active young mother who hardly takes any maternity leave. She still maintains a balance between her motherly responsibilities and her thriving career. Every day, Abril cooks delicious meals, helps her children with their homework, takes them to sports and tries to be a good friend to them. Their family appears to be perfect. They are wealthy, successful, and have 3 well-behaved children. However, appearances do not always reflect reality. The problems within their family were not known for a long time, even to those closest to them. In fact, one showed his true colors in the early years of their marriage. He was hot-tempered, aggressive, and very demanding. He did not like to compromise and wanted everything exactly his way. At first, Abril thought that over time, his personality would soften. However, Juan Carlos's true personality was still there. But they still had joint projects, and their teamwork brought impressive results. However, over time, he became more angry, and the verbal arguments gradually escalated into physical violence. After the birth of their first daughter, Juan had a period of calm, trying to restrain his emotions. But this restraint did not last. Unfortunately, after the birth of his eldest son and continuing after the birth of his third child, he no longer tried to be a good father or husband. Juan Carlos often vented his anger and negative emotions on his wife, not keeping any negative emotions to himself. He insulted and belittled his wife, who was the mother of their children, and it seemed that she had to endure this suffering. He often physically abused his wife, but in order not to leave any marks on her body, he forced her to hide her injuries with clothes or makeup. All these actions were done to protect his perfect reputation and pride in being considered a good man. Abril kept silent for many years, trying not to tell her sister and mother about her terrible life. She could support herself with a well-paid job and could raise her children, giving them a good and stable life, but her husband was a rich and influential man. He could use his power and money to gain custody of the children through the courts, forcing her to stay silent and endure this abuse for a long time. Knowing the true nature of Juan Carlos, Perez could not accept that her daughter and son were left alone with someone who could do anything without control. The family situation reached a dead end by the beginning of 2010. Those who had thought this was an ideal family began to suspect that something serious was going on inside. Abril became desperate, terribly thin, suffered from insomnia, and often had bruises on his face and body that became difficult to hide and impossible to explain. Juan Carlos remained calm and confident, pretending that everything was fine in public. He continued to portray the role of a loving and caring husband, polite and affectionate to his wife, but the reality was completely different when he was at home. He became a cruel person, making it dangerous to be around him. Although Abril's loved ones asked for a divorce, Abril insisted that everything was fine and that she would resolve the issue with her husband herself. 2014 marked the peak of Sanchez's career when he became the director of a large trading company and one of the most influential people in the field. After his promotion, his family moved to Mexico City and settled in a large house in one of the capital's most beautiful neighborhoods. Their children attended a prestigious private school. Abril hoped that the move and the complete change of scenery would improve their relationship. However, the opposite happened. Juan continued to hurt and insult his wife, even in front of their children. He began to accuse her of infidelity without any basis. Whenever she tried to defend herself, he resorted to violence, claiming to find evidence of her infidelity. He monitored her phone and emails and banned her from using social media. After that, finding no evidence, he even hired a private investigator to follow Abril and take pictures of any man who came near her. Over the next 4 years, Abril tried everything to save her marriage, although her husband's behavior became completely unbearable. She lived in a never-ending nightmare. On the surface, it seemed like a happy and successful marriage. Many people were even jealous of Abril because she had a famous, influential, wealthy and, as many thought, caring husband. In 2018, the Sanchez family visited the Perez family in Monterrey to celebrate Christmas. However, Juan Carlos continued to treat his wife roughly, even in front of her parents. The incident left them extremely shocked and appalled. After witnessing this, Abril realized that she could not continue living like this and decided to divorce. She informed Juan of her intention, but he reacted with rage, choking her to the point that she almost fainted. The incident only stopped and Abril's mother entered the room and intervened. Upon returning to Mexico City, Abril decided to divorce and moved to another bedroom in the house. However, this did not protect her from her husband's violence. On the morning of January 4th, her husband entered the bedroom and attacked her with a baseball bat. Abril was lucky to escape death by slipping out of bed. She screamed, and their children ran into the room. The youngest son protected his mother while the eldest son took the baseball bat from his father. Together, they ran out of the house and to the hospital where Abril received the medical attention she needed. Doctors diagnosed Abril with a severe concussion and a deep wound above her eyebrow, which required stitches. Shortly after Abril and the children left the house, Juan Carlos contacted a lawyer and posted on social media about the conflict between him and his wife, claiming that his wife had betrayed him. Juan Carlos also claimed that his wife had taken all the money from the safe and that when he tried to stop her, she had stabbed him with a knife. As evidence, he posted a photo of a bloody knife and blood stains on the floor. However, the blood on the floor was actually Abril's, from her own room. The photo of the knife was also taken from the internet. Despite this, Juan Carlos' friends believed his story and reshared it on social media, drawing attention to the incident. While still in the hospital, Abril sued her husband for intentional injury. After being discharged from the hospital, she left the house and moved in with her sons. According to the temporary decision, she was granted sole custody of the children. Their eldest daughter, now of age and in college, sided with her mother and denounced her father's cruelty. Juan was ordered to pay alimony to his ex-wife and sons while they lived with their mother. The amount of alimony was relatively small, about $300. However, Sanchez refused to pay and faced jail time. However, given his status as an influential businessman, he believed he would not face any punishment. After experiencing the nightmare, Abril decided to return to her hometown of Monterrey, to her parents' house, taking her children with her. There, she filed for divorce and monitored the situation. At the same time, she began providing online support and counseling to women in similar situations. She also planned to open a center for psychological and legal support for victims of domestic violence. However, the judicial system was disappointing. It was not until September 2019, 8.5 months after the incident, that Sanchez was arrested for causing bodily harm and attempting to kill his wife. He was sent to prison, but after just over a month, he successfully appealed and was released in November of that year. The case was presided over by Judge Federico M., who surprisingly reclassified the case, leading to a new trial. During the trial, Abril's hospital photos and entries from her medical records were not presented. At the same time, the testimony of the woman and her sons was not considered sufficient grounds to detain Juan Carlos. Furthermore, Juan insisted that his ex-wife was turning the children against him. Juan was released immediately from the courtroom because Judge M considered that his actions did not pose a direct threat to the victim's life. According to the judge, if Juan had really intended to end his wife's life, he would have done so, especially since she was asleep during the attack and could not resist. Abril was shocked and frightened when she learned that her ex-husband had been released. She immediately realized that Juan had all the connections and had paid off his way out of jail, putting her and her daughter's lives at risk. She wrote a formal letter to the judge expressing her fear and concern for her life, but it did not seem to have any positive impact. After being released, Juan Carlos initiated a lawsuit for custody of the children. He demanded that she return to Mexico City to attend the hearing, and if she did not attend, the case could be decided without her, which would certainly be disadvantageous to her. She had no choice but to return to the city. Returning to Mexico City was a tragic scene that Abril could not avoid. On November 25th, Abril overcame her fears and went to Mexico City. She feared the man she had been living with, but she knew she had to face reality to protect her children. She planned to leave the city immediately after the hearing and had already bought a plane ticket back, which Juan Carlos also knew. On the day of their custody hearing, a tragic incident occurred. After the hearing, Abril, her sons, and their lawyers got into a car and headed to the airport. However, when they reached a traffic light, a motorcyclist stopped next to their vehicle and suddenly pulled out a pistol, firing 2 shots at Abril, who was sitting in the front passenger seat. He then quickly fled the scene. 1 bullet passed through and grazed the youngest son who was sitting in the back seat, but fortunately none of the children were seriously injured. Abril was taken to the nearest hospital, where doctors tried to save her life for more than 6 hours. However, due to severe injuries and loss of blood, they were unable to save her, and she passed away that evening. Abril's family immediately flew to the capital and asked the authorities to arrest the person they believed was behind the attack. However, law enforcement agencies had a different view. They said that without identifying the shooter, it would be difficult to determine his motive and the details involved. Meanwhile, Juan Carlos remains free and the police begin searching for the perpetrator, a process that could take a long time. The orphans have been placed in the care of relatives on their mother's side for the time being, while their father prepares for another legal battle to regain custody. Abril's sister wrote a social media post criticizing Juan for the incident. However, her account was blocked and later deleted. Nevertheless, Abril's family decided to continue fighting and draw public attention to the case. They stressed that the attack occurred on a day dedicated to protests against domestic violence, which made the incident even more despicable. The public outcry forced the prime suspect, Juan, to flee. Abril's family drew attention to the tragedy that had befallen them. At the same time, people also began to openly discuss many cases of men trying to kill women but being unpunished and still going free. Mexican politician and women's rights activist Claudia Sheinbaum Pardo has officially confirmed that Abril's case will be reinvestigated and classified as femicide. Judges could face consequences if Juan Carlos's guilt is proven. Juan Carlos, a businessman who posts frequently on social media, has called for his ex-wife's perpetrators to be found and punished to the fullest extent of the law. He has stated that despite his disagreements with his ex-wife, he would never harm the mother of his children. However, his daughter, Ana Cecilia, has taken a stand against her father and left an angry comment, accusing him of cruelty and including photos of her mother in the hospital after Juan Carlos attacked her with a baseball bat. Despite the case receiving extensive media coverage, it was decided to leave Juan free while the investigation is ongoing. He has been placed under a restraining order and must report to the police weekly. However, after he failed to appear at the scheduled time, a warrant was issued for his arrest. As expected, no one could find the defendant. Juan used his money and connections to quickly leave the country and enter the United States. Mexico contacted Interpol and reported the fugitive accused of serious crimes. The next day, Juan was declared an internationally wanted man. To investigate the case, the police hired a crime scene reconstruction expert. During this time, they also tried to locate the hired criminal. The results showed that he did not act alone. Street camera footage showed two vehicles following the car of Abril, her children, and their lawyer from the courthouse. The motorcyclist committed the murder and appeared to be in constant contact with the people in the aforementioned cars to receive instructions. Investigators spent months identifying some of the people involved in the incident. Finally, on March 5, 2020, two suspects were arrested in connection with the case. Surprisingly, the participants in this case did not resist arrest. They immediately began to confess to their actions and surrendered in the hope of reducing their sentences. Through investigation, it was determined that the real mastermind was Juan Carlos. He paid a large sum of money to 7 people who directly participated in this act. The first people to be arrested were the driver of the car that participated in the chase and the motorcyclist who fired the fatal shots. The investigation also showed that, before the incident, Juan Carlos hired several experienced criminals to act as his personal bodyguards while in prison. One of these criminals was released a week before the incident, and the other was released a few days later. After being released from prison, Juan contacted his accomplices again and asked them to find trustworthy people to carry out an assassination. He promised to pay a large sum of money to each of them if they succeeded. Once all the participants were identified, Juan transferred the promised money and provided details of the route and vehicle the victim would use. However, the most difficult part of the plan was luring Juan's ex-wife to Mexico City. He resorted to threatening Abril that he would take the children if she did not appear in court. Although she complied with the court order, she had no intention of staying in the capital and planned to return to Monterrey the same day. Juan learned this information from his sources. It was not until late October 2020 that 3 people involved in the criminal conspiracy were arrested. They were initially arrested on suspicion of distributing narcotics. It was only when they were brought to the police station that it was discovered they might be involved in a serious crime. All of those arrested were members of a major drug trafficking gang headed by Maldonado, also known as Balto. He served time with Juan Carlos and protected him. Maldonado then agreed to help Juan in the murder of his ex-wife in exchange for a large reward. Maldonado was arrested in November 2020 and began to testify. According to his testimony, Juan had been looking for trustworthy people to end the life of his ex-wife, and Maldonado agreed to help. With these statements, it was clear that Juan was both a client and an organizer of the crime. The previous attack on Abril with a baseball bat was reclassified as attempted murder. The court eventually issued an arrest warrant for Juan on charges of murdering his wife. However, his whereabouts are currently unknown. By spring 2021, the remaining participants in Juan's commissioned murder were found and arrested. One of them was arrested for another crime at the time. In addition, during the extended search, the weapon used to carry out the fatal shots was found. A total of 9 people involved in this criminal group have been arrested, of whom 7 were directly involved in the pursuit and murder of Abril. Although it has been nearly 5 years since Abril's death, the main perpetrator and the person who hired him to carry out the crime, Juan Carlos Garcia Sanchez, is still at large and his whereabouts are currently unknown. The person who directly shot the mother of 3 children was sentenced to 52 years in prison. 2 other criminals who participated in the car chase and assisted the shooter were also sentenced to 50 years in prison each. The other arrested participants are still under investigation, and their fate has not been decided. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Shannon Christian. Hugh Christopher Newsom Jr., commonly known as Christopher, was born on September 21, 1983 in Knoxville, Tennessee, to Mary and Hugh Newsom in a large, loving family. As the youngest child, he was doted on by his family. Christopher was an athlete as a youngster, particularly excelling at baseball during his school years. His coach believed he had a bright future in the sport, but a serious injury and lengthy recovery ended his promising athletic career. Christopher was a man of many talents. In addition to being an excellent artist and guitar player, he was skilled in carpentry and had knowledge of cars and motorcycles. As a young man, Christopher dreamed of becoming a mechanic, but he ended up spending much of his time on his passion for carpentry. After graduating from high school, Christopher attended the University of Tennessee, where he studied hard and became one of the top students. Shannon Gail Christian was born on April 29, 1985, in Nagdoy, Texas, the youngest of two children born to Dina and Gary Christian. She grew up with her older brother, Chase, and the two had a close relationship. In 1997, the family moved to Knoxville, Tennessee, where the children attended local schools and their parents started a small business. At home, Dina conducted individual therapy sessions. Shannon was an outgoing and kind girl who shared her mother's interest in psychology. After graduating from high school, she studied sociology at the University of Tennessee and worked part-time to save money for a car. On her 21st birthday, her family helped her buy the silver Toyota 4Runner of her dreams. In 2006, when Shannon was 21 and Christopher was 23, they met through mutual friends at college. It was love at first sight and they quickly became attached. After only a month, Christopher introduced Shannon to his parents and expressed his future intentions to her. Shannon reciprocated by introducing Christopher to her family, and he was warmly welcomed. In October 2006, an important family dinner was held, attended by both parents and siblings. Discussions revolved around Shannon and Christopher's deep feelings for each other, their plans to get married after graduating from college. Everyone was happy and full of hope for the future, unaware of the tragedy that was about to happen to their family. On January 6, 2007, Shannon and Christopher were invited to a mutual friend's birthday party. That Saturday, Shannon went to a beauty salon to prepare for the celebration, parking her car in a nearby underground garage where they planned to meet. However, Christopher arrived late, leading to a small argument between them because they were late for the event. Shannon and Christopher's friends were worried when the couple missed the party. Normally, they were very responsible people and would not miss an event without notice. People tried to contact them by phone but were unsuccessful. In this situation, Shannon's best friend called her mother several times late at night to check on her, but also received no response. The next morning, Shannon's mother, Dina, noticed that her daughter had not returned home. She was not too worried at first, thinking that Shannon might have stayed at Christopher's house after the party or gone straight to work because she had a shift on Sunday. However, Dina's worries increased when she saw several missed calls from unknown numbers in the middle of the night. When she called back, she was informed that Shannon and Christopher had not attended the birthday party and could not be reached. This caused Dina to panic, thinking that something bad had happened to her daughter. Neither Shannon nor Christopher answered their phone calls. Christopher's parents were also surprised, thinking that he was at Shannon's house. The situation became even more worrying when they discovered that Shannon had not gone to work. Both sets of parents immediately called the police, but the response was lukewarm. The police thought that Shannon and Christopher might have wanted some time alone and could not be tracked down. They also followed protocol to only consider an adult missing after 24 hours of no contact. For Shannon and Christopher, however, those 24 hours were crucial. Their parents and friends searched frantically for them. They contacted everyone they knew, checked hospitals, distributed flyers, and used social media to find information. However, no leads emerged. Shannon was last seen at the hair salon on Saturday, when she only talked about an upcoming party. On Monday, January 8th, the police began searching for Shannon and Christopher. By this time, thanks to the efforts of family and friends, the whole city knew about their disappearance. A railway worker discovered badly damaged human remains on an embankment along the tracks. The bodies were in a terrible state, with multiple injuries and burned with a flammable liquid. The police cordoned off the area and investigated, but found no significant clues. After being photographed, the remains were taken to the morgue for an autopsy and an attempt at identification. Although this would be difficult due to the extensive damage to the body, the autopsy revealed that the victim was a young man who had been brutally murdered. He had suffered multiple serious injuries before his death, including losing most of his teeth due to beatings. He had been shot 3 times, twice in the back and once fatally in the head. Evidence also suggested that he had been raped multiple times by at least 3 different attackers. Police identified the victim as Christopher, a young man who had recently gone missing, based on his physical appearance. They contacted the Newsom family to obtain a DNA sample for confirmation. The DNA results eventually confirmed that it was Christopher. Meanwhile, the search for Shannon continued. Although devastated by the news of Christopher, the Shannon family remained hopeful that she was alive. Shannon's last cell phone signal was detected in a dangerous area of Knoxville where neither of them frequented, suggesting they may have been coerced into going there and that Shannon may still be held in the area. Shannon's Toyota 4Runner was found abandoned in a deserted alley. The car was in such bad condition that her parents barely recognized it. It was dirty, scratched, had a broken light, and flat tires. Shannon's personal belongings were gone, replaced by cigarette butts and a damaged car seat. The driver's seat was pushed back, suggesting the last driver was a large man. An envelope with the address 2316 Chipman Street was found between the seats. A witness reported seeing 4 black men driving the SUV on Saturday night. Fingerprints on the envelope led police to Lamarcus Davidson, a man with a criminal record. His home was in a remote industrial area. When no one answered, police forced their way in, hoping to find Shannon alive. Inside the house, police found Shannon's personal items, including a wallet and stuffed toys, along with headphones and Christopher's baseball cap. They also found a bloody knife and torn, bloody women's clothing. Shannon's body was found in the house's trash bin, wrapped in dirty bedsheets and 5 trash bags, in a fetal position. Experts estimate she died in the early morning hours of January 8th. This suggests that if police had started searching immediately after receiving the missing person report instead of waiting 24 hours, Shannon could have been saved. The condition of Shannon's body shocked even experienced forensic experts. Her entire body was covered in bruises, scratches, cuts and cigarette burns. Injuries to her genitals, mouth, and throat suggested she had been sexually assaulted by multiple men. Shannon also had severe head injuries and internal bleeding in her abdomen, possibly from being kicked. The attackers brutally tortured her by stabbing her multiple times. They tried to erase her DNA by pouring bleach on her, especially her wounds and private parts, and even forced her to drink bleach. They then wrapped her in a garbage bag, stuffed her in a trash can, and covered her up. She slowly died of suffocation and blood loss, unable to escape or call for help. 5 suspects have been identified in the murders of Shannon Christian and Christopher Newsom. Lamarcus Davidson, the main suspect, was immediately sought. Police are also looking for Eric Boyd, another suspect in connection with the crime scene. Eric was arrested on January 11th and cooperated with the investigation, claiming his innocence. He revealed where Lamarcus was hiding and led police there. He was arrested without resistance. When he was arrested, he was wearing the shoes of the deceased victim. During questioning, Lamarcus tried to minimize his role by claiming to be the victim. He said Shannon and Christopher had come to his house to buy drugs but had gotten into an argument with an acquaintance of his. He claimed he had left to avoid involvement and the violence that had occurred in his absence. Subsequent interviews revealed 3 more people involved: Davidson's friend George Thomas, Letalvis Cobbins, and Vanessa Coleman, 18. The 5 suspects were arrested and held separately for questioning. They blamed each other, inadvertently revealing details of the crime. From their fragmentary statements, police were able to reconstruct the sequence of events and the roles each person played in the crime. Lamaricus, a newly paroled man, was having financial difficulties. He had started dealing drugs and needed a car to make deliveries. He decided to steal a car from an underground parking lot without security cameras and went there with his accomplices. Unfortunately, Shannon and Christopher were in the parking lot at the time and were arguing. The gang decided to kidnap them so as not to leave any witnesses. They held them at gunpoint and put them in the trunk of the car. The couple were taken to Lamaricus's house, where they were brutally beaten and raped. After midnight, Christopher was forced into the trunk of the car, naked and barefoot. He was taken to the train tracks, forced to walk on gravel, and shot twice in the back and once in the head. His body was then doused with flammable liquid and set on fire to destroy the evidence. After attacking Christopher, the gang returned to the house, where Shannon was still tied up. The next day, she was subjected to brutal torture, causing severe injuries to her entire body. They eventually doused her with bleach and stuffed her into a plastic garbage bag while she was still alive, causing her to slowly suffocate. It is unclear when Vanessa Coleman joined the group. She claimed that she was forced to participate in the crimes. However, Eric pointed out that Vanessa was Lamaricus' girlfriend and participated willingly, even taking Shannon's jewelry and phone. The investigation determined that Lamaricus Davidson, born in 1981, was the leader of the group and the main instigator of the brutal acts. Lamaricus attempted to deflect blame and minimize his role, while placing the blame on the dead victims. Lamaricus was convicted of 40 counts, including assault, kidnapping, robbery, and premeditated murder. The jury unanimously decided to sentence Lamaricus to death for his brutal acts. Letalvis Cobbins, born in 1982, initially faced the death penalty for torture, assault, and participation in the murder. He was eventually sentenced to life in prison without parole. George Thomas, born in 1983, was also sentenced to the same sentence for similar crimes, with no chance of parole. Eric Boyd cooperated with the investigation and helped capture Lamaricus, and was sentenced to 18 years in prison. The victim's family said the sentence was too lenient. Vanessa Coleman, the only woman involved in the atrocities, was sentenced to 53 years in prison. In 2011, the case took a surprising turn when the presiding judge resigned due to drug addiction, calling his ability to judge into question. The verdicts from the previous 2 years were overturned, leading to a retrial, including the case of Kristen and Christopher. A new judge was appointed to retry all 5 defendants. As a result, Lamaricus was still sentenced to death. Letalvis continues to serve life without parole. George was sentenced to life with the possibility of parole after 51 years. Vanessa had her sentence reduced from 53 years to 35 years. Her appeal in 2014 was rejected, and her request for parole in 2017 was also denied. In 2020, the parole board decided that she must continue serving her sentence until at least April 2032. Eric Boyd's case took a significant turn. Initially, he received a shorter sentence for cooperating with investigators. However, new evidence later proved his involvement in the assaults and deaths of both victims. At his retrial, his accomplice George testified against him, revealing previously unknown details about Eric's role. As a result, Eric was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. George, who originally faced the possibility of parole after 51 years, had his sentence reduced by 15% for his testimony, provided he maintains good behavior. Eric's attempts to appeal his new sentence were unsuccessful, and he is currently incarcerated at the Bledsoe County Correctional Complex. Lamaricus continues to be held at the maximum security Riverbend institution as he awaits execution. The case had a profound impact on the public and legal system. It received extensive media coverage and resulted in the passage of 2 new laws. The first law was designed to protect victims from attempts to defame them or shift blame onto them during trials. This legislation was a direct response to the defense team's strategy, which falsely portrayed the murdered students as drug users and thrill seekers in a dangerous area. These baseless accusations caused significant distress to the victims' families. The second law removed the requirement for a judge's signature on a unanimous jury verdict. If this law had been in effect during this case, it could have avoided the need for retrials and sentence reviews. The house at 2316 Chipman Street, where the young couple was tortured, was demolished in the fall of 2008. A memorial was built there to honor Shannon, Kristen, and Christopher Newsom. In Christian's memory, a golf tournament and a charitable foundation were established to support violence victims. Similarly, a foundation in Newsom's name was created, hosting annual memorial baseball tournaments at Halls Park and offering a scholarship named after him, as he was a student and former baseball player. Initially, the media misrepresented details of the case, whether accidentally or intentionally, despite the public outcry and widespread attention. Many people believed that differences in reporting and delays in coverage were racially motivated because the victims were white and the perpetrators were African American. However, the head of the Association of Criminal Writers and Editors remarked, "I can't confidently say that this case would have gotten more attention if 5 white criminals had been accused of similar crimes against 2 black individuals." Moreover, the Knoxville police chief confirmed that there was no evidence suggesting that these crimes were racially motivated. Hello, crime enthusiasts, are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Neha Varma. Megha Deshpande lived with her 21-year-old daughter, Ashlesha, and her 70-year-old mother, Rohini, in a luxurious neighborhood called Srinagar in Indore. This city known for consistently ranking as one of the cleanest in India. The fact that they resided in Srinagar, an area predominantly inhabited by the wealthy, suggested that the Deshpande family was financially well off. Megha worked for a multi-level marketing, MLM, company for a considerable time. MLM is also referred to as network marketing, direct selling, and pyramid selling. To understand how an MLM business works, imagine a pyramid structure. At the top is the company owner. When the owner recruits 2 individuals, and they join the company, it creates a network. These 2 individuals then recruit more people to join the company, and the process continues. The company generates profit from each new member or associate that joins, allowing the business owner to constantly earn income through the growth of their network. Before moving to Indore, Megha lived in Yuan, a city approximately 35 miles away, with her husband, Nanai Deshpande. However, due to his job as a bank manager, Nanai remained in Yuan, while Megha relocated to Indore with her daughter and mother a few months ago. Thanks to Nanai's stable job and Megha's successful career in the MLM company, the Megha's family has a stable financial situation and does not have to worry about money. In the neighborhood where Megha lives, people are very united and it is also very safe with very little crime. Residents have always felt safe and nothing unusual has ever happened there until June 13, 2011, when that all changed. On that day, no one in Megha's family left the house until noon and no one heard their voices. A neighbor walked by Megha's house and then she noticed a very strange thing. Footprints made of bloody stains led around the house, alarming her. She quickly notified the landlord. And the landlord then knocked on the door several times, but received no answer. Next, the landlord attempted to look inside through a window and was met with a very scary sight. 3 women were lying on the floor, their bodies covered in blood. Overcome with fear, he quickly alerted the police. The brutal murder of the Mega family members sent shockwaves through the community. By the time the police arrived at the crime scene, a large crowd had gathered outside their house. Upon entering the house, the police officers were met with a gruesome scene, the bodies of 3 women who had been brutally murdered. The police secured the crime scene and began their investigation. During this process, they found 2 bullet shells inside the house. One of the shells was linked to the gunshot wound that killed Mega, who had been shot in the head. However, despite a thorough search of the house lobby, the police were unable to locate the second bullet. A forensic team was called in to collect evidence from the crime scene. The bodies of the 3 women were then sent for post-mortem examination. As news of the murder spread, the entire city of Indore was left reeling in shock. The post-mortem report later revealed that 21-year-old Ashlesha and her 70-year-old grandmother, Rohini, had died from excessive bleeding caused by multiple stab wounds inflicted on their bodies. This report confirms that Mega was the only one shot to death. However, it raises a crucial question for the police. If 2 bullet shells were found, who was the second shot intended for? Mega's husband, along with the public, also started pressuring the police, demanding that they solve the case quickly so that the criminals are held accountable to the fullest extent of Indian law. This makes it even more urgent for the police to solve this case quickly. To do this, several teams were deployed to investigate. One team analyzed the call detail records of the 3 victims, Mega, Ashlesha, Rohini. Another team re-examined the forensic evidence. Initially, the police have collected a blood sample from the crime scene that didn't belong to Mega, Ashlesha, or Rohini. The police then detained and questioned various suspects from the surrounding area. Based on the evidence collected, the police have recorded this as a robbery and murder case. Further investigation of the phone records revealed that there was a phone number that had called Mega multiple times and she had long conversations with this number. After obtaining detailed information about the number, the police found it was registered to a girl named Neha. They then began tracking her location to gather potential leads in the case. One day, the police located Neha near an ATM in the area. They promptly sent a team to bring her to the police station for questioning. After being informed of the situation of the case, Neha was left astounded. She explained that she initially met Mega at a shopping mall. Then, Neha had bumped into Mega while rushing, causing Mega to drop some items. As Neha apologized and helped Mega gather her belongings, they engaged in conversation and developed a rapport. And Neha even driving Mega to her car, marking the start of their friendship. Neha also discovered that Mega worked for a multi-level marketing, MLM, company. After exchanging phone numbers, they occasionally spoke over the phone. Neha's interest in the MLM business model led her to discuss it with Mega. However, the police found Neha's story suspicious, as her words didn't match her body language. As a result, the police questioned her forcefully and in a confrontational manner. Neha initially tries to hide her dishonesty, but under intense police questioning, she confesses. She then told the police a story that even surprised them. Neha Varma was a 23-year-old beautician who was known for her beauty and cheerful personality. Her father, a van driver, had limited financial resources, making it challenging for Neha to pursue her dreams. During this time, Neha met Rahul, and they developed a close friendship that blossomed into romance. At 24, Rahul was handsome but also struggled financially. Despite their similar financial situations, they deeply loved each other and wanted to get married. They sought opportunities to rapidly build wealth and achieve a comfortable lifestyle, securing their financial future. Neha and Mega met for the first time. Mega, who had a taste for expensive jewelry, was wearing gold ornaments that day. Neha perceived Megha as wealthy due to her jewelry and decided to approach her. Neha started approaching Megha by deliberately bumping into her, start chatting and befriending her. Neha started thinking about robbing Megha after getting to call her through phone calls. Neha then shared her plan with her boyfriend Rahul, telling him that Megha was extremely wealthy, making her an easy target. Rahul liked the idea, as it would solve their financial problems and allow them to live comfortably once they were married. Following this, Rahul started making plans to kill Megha and the 2 other women in her house. He thought that if he could get away with the crime without anyone finding out, no one would be able to file a complaint against them. Rahul finalized his plan but needed a gun to carry it out. Luckily for him, his friend Manoj, who was close to both Rahul and Neha, had a gun. Rahul had been planning to kill Megha and her family, and he was waiting for the perfect moment to execute his plan. That moment arrived on June 13, 2011. On that day, Neha called Megha and expressed interest in joining her multi-level marketing scheme, MLM. Unbeknownst to Megha, this was a ruse orchestrated by Rahul. Neha arrived at Megha's house early in the morning, and Megha asked her to fill out a membership form. However, Neha didn't know what information to fill in the form, so she asked Megha if she could get a friend arrive to help her. Megha agreed, and Neha then called Rahul, as planned. Rahul and his accomplice, Manoj, were waiting for Neha's call, and they immediately went to Megha's house. Once Rahul entered the house, he pulled out a gun and shot Megha at point-blank range, killing her instantly. The sound of this gunshot reached Ashlesha and Rohini, causing both of them to run into the lobby. Rahul and Manoj initially intimidated Ashlesha and her grandmother Rohini, demanding Ashlesha's ATM card and PIN in exchange for their lives. Ashlesha, hoping to be spared, quickly handed over the card. However, Rahul and Manoj were aware that they had been seen, and this posed a risk to their. To eliminate witnesses, Rahul attempted to shoot Ashlesha but accidentally shot himself in the foot instead. Manoj then took a knife and brutally murdered both Ashlesha and Rohini. After the killings, the 3 thieves, including Neha, Rahul, Manoj, stole approximately 1 million Indian rupees and valuable jewelry worth up to $500,000 rupees and Ashlesha's ATM card. Rahul, along with Neha and Manoj, had planned to use the ATM card to withdraw cash. However, their plan failed when Neha was arrested by the police. Rahul to file an untrue report at the police station and was arrested, but was later hospitalized due to gunshot wounds. The police matched Rahul's blood sample from the crime scene to one taken from him. It was a match. The police quickly solved the case and arrested the suspects. Following a prolonged and contentious court case, the 3 defendants, Neha, Rahul, Manoj, were sentenced to death by hanging in December 2013. The district court handed down this severe punishment due to the heinous nature of the crime, in which the defendants killed women from 3 generations of the Megha family. Physical evidence, including blood-stained clothing, knives, and jewelry, was recovered from the defendants by the police. One of the defendants, Neha, is currently serving her sentence in the central jail. Notably, she has been teaching a beauty parlor course to fellow female inmates while incarcerated. This case was notable for being the first time the district court had imposed a death sentence on a woman. Neha and Rahul's desire for quick wealth led them to get involved in a life of crime. It is fortunate that the perpetrators were caught. If Megha had not worn her valuable jewelry to the mall and had not trusted a stranger she met there, the outcome may have been different. Megha's husband, Nana Deshpande, was pleased with the court's decision and praised the judiciary and the police for their efforts. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another perplexing mystery. The case of Irene Cortez. Irene Cortez was born in 1980 in Granada, Spain. She is the eldest of a well-off family with a younger brother and sister. Her parents ran a small business, but her father died early. Her mother, Maria Lucas, took over and expanded the business, ensuring that her children did not lack anything. Irene was a beautiful, sociable girl who loved to be the center of attention. She married and became pregnant at the age of 17, then had a second child 2 years later. With the support of her mother and uncle, she continued to pursue education. In the early 2000s, Irene with her husband and 2 children moved to the resort city of Malaga and opened a disco bar. The bar became popular. The bar later transformed into a full-fledged nightclub and brought her profits. The couple welcomed their 3rd child and life seemed prosperous and stable. However, at the age of 25, Irene's husband was arrested and sentenced to 5 years in prison for trafficking illegal narcotics. He later died in prison under mysterious circumstances. Irene was left to raise her children on her own. She remembered how her mother had raised 3 children on her own and was determined to persevere. Irene successfully ran her own business, made a lot of money and had big plans for the future. In Malaga, Irene was immediately impressed by the hardworking and reliable man named Ferd. She was also attracted to him and Ferd always tried to please her. At the time, Irene's husband was in prison and she planned to file for divorce, but he died before she could do so. Irene and Ferd's relationship gradually blossomed into love. Ferd Saras, born in Baronia, Colombia, grew up in a large and poor family. When he was young, his parents separated in the early 90s. His siblings became independent and he lived with his mother. In 2001, Ferd and his elderly mother moved to Spain in search of a better life. They settled in Malaga, where Ferd took any job he could find to support himself and his mother. Despite Ferd's humble background and Irene's 3 children from previous relationships, Ferd and Irene decided to move in together. They settled in Irene's spacious apartment and soon after, Irene became pregnant with their first child. Their marriage produced a total of 3 children. However, it is unclear whether they were officially married. Irene kept her first husband's surname, while the children born to Ferd were given the surname Saras. In 2009, Irene's life took a negative turn. Ferd was arrested for drug trafficking and sentenced to prison, just like her first husband. Irene was left to care for her 5 children alone. Although Ferd's sentence was 3 years, he was pardoned after serving only a year and a half for his good behavior and cooperation during the investigation. While Ferd was in prison, Irene began a relationship with another man and lived with him. However, when Ferd was released and discovered Irene's infidelity, he became furious. He threatened Irene and her new boyfriend, even intending to injure the man. Fortunately, the situation was resolved without becoming a serious problem. Later, Ferd decided to forgive Irene for the sake of their children's happiness and they decided to continue living together. However, Irene's relatives were still suspicious of Ferd's intentions. Irene's mother and uncle believed that Ferd was only interested in Irene's wealth and did not support their relationship. Irene's older children from a previous marriage could not accept Ferd, but the youngest child, who had been raised by Ferd since he was 2 years old, considered him a real father. In early 2011, Ferd wanted to return to Colombia to visit his homeland because his father was seriously ill. Ferd's father had been diagnosed with terminal cancer, and his sister had informed him of his health condition. Irene also wanted to visit Colombia and decided to go with her husband. She wanted to meet Ferd's father for the first time and experience the famous Baronia Festival, an event that usually takes place at the end of February. For Irene, the trip was also a much-needed break after years of hard work and raising 5 children without a break. Irene and Ferd had planned a 10-day trip, and her mother and sister had agreed to take care of the children during their absence. Although Irene's mother had concerns about the trip, she did not take them seriously. However, at the time, Irene's family was in financial trouble due to an unfortunate business. The situation became worse when Irene discovered that the €3,000 in personal savings she had kept at home had disappeared the night before they left. This almost caused their plans to be cancelled. But Irene quickly found a solution and borrowed money from her uncle and some close friends. She then booked plane tickets in a hotel in the city center, ensuring that they were ready for the trip. Irene and Ferd arrived in Colombia on February 27, 2011. Upon arrival, they checked into a hotel and Irene called home to inform her mother that the flight had gone smoothly. 2 days later, Ferd broke the bad news of Irene's death to her 14-year-old eldest son, initially claiming it was an accident. However, the truth was soon revealed. Irene had been murdered during a robbery at an entertainment venue in Baronia. The case attracted widespread media attention in Colombia. Initially, the story revolved around Irene, a Spanish tourist who was murdered by robbers and fled the scene, leading to a massive police manhunt across the city. But the circumstances of the robbery and murder were unusual. The attackers did not appear to have been interested in stealing valuables, instead shooting Irene in the heart before fleeing the scene. Upon arriving at the scene, Ferd's calm demeanor during interviews with police and media representatives raised suspicions. Authorities confirmed Irene's murder and said that her remains would be repatriated once the investigation was complete. As investigators reviewed surveillance footage from the scene, the mystery of Irene Cortez's death began to unravel. The footage was important because it captured Irene and Ferd Garris meeting Ferd's brother, sister, and wife on March 1st. That evening, the group spent time attending a festival, walking around town, and then going to a local bar for dinner at Ferd's suggestion. As the time passed 1 a.m. and the bar emptied, Irene's group were the only customers left, along with the bar staff. However, things took a turn for the worse around 2 a.m. when two men who seemed uncomfortable walked into the restaurant. What worried the manager was that the two men did not order any food or drinks, and their behavior was very suspicious. Furthermore, their youthful appearance prompted the manager to check whether they were of legal age. The young men refused to show identification when asked to leave. One of them pulled out a gun and pointed it at the manager. His accomplice pulled out a knife but quickly moved out of view of the camera. The gunman pushed the manager aside, approached Irene's table and announced his intention to rob her, demanding her cell phone and cash. The accomplice with the knife reappeared, presumably to collect valuables, while the gunman threatened the group. The gunman ordered Ferd to stand up so he could search her pockets. As Irene attempted to grab her purse, the attacker shoved her with his gun. A shot was fired as he grabbed the purse, hitting Irene in the chest. She fell to the floor, and the attackers fled without taking anything. Faced with a dangerous situation, Ferd and his brother chased the attackers while his sister tried to treat Irene's wounds. At that time, the brother's wife called for help, but the attackers escaped too quickly to catch up. The emergency services arrived quickly, but Irene died of her injuries on the way to the hospital. After the robbery and murder at the bar, which left Irene dead, law enforcement agencies mobilized all possible resources. Since the city was in the midst of a crowded holiday season, ensuring their safety was of utmost importance. A large reward was announced, 10 million pesos, equivalent to €3,500, for information leading to the perpetrator. Shortly after, a suspect named Brian Dario was arrested. He later gave the name of his accomplice, Juan Carlos. Juan Carlos, 18, voluntarily surrendered in the hope of a lighter sentence. During Brian's interrogation, he claimed that his financial situation, debts, and the need to care for his sick child with high medical costs led him to commit the crime. These statements were later confirmed by his relatives. Brian also claimed that the shooting of Irene was an accident while he was trying to snatch her handbag. Juan Carlos also claimed that he was involved in the crime unintentionally. He said that Brian did not reveal his detailed plan but asked for help in his work. Juan claimed that he only carried a small knife to threaten, not to cause injury, and left the scene when he realized Brian's true intentions. However, surveillance camera footage contradicts Juan's statement, showing that he returned to Brian. With both suspects arrested and confessing to the crime, the case seemed to be solved and prison sentences awaited them. The court found Brian guilty of robbery and murder, with aggravating circumstances, and sentenced him to 23 years in prison. Meanwhile, Juan received a 17-year sentence for his role as Brian's accomplice. From the beginning of the investigation, Irene's family accused Ferd of orchestrating the murder of his wife. Irene's mother and uncle hired a private investigator to conduct an independent investigation, gathering additional evidence and files to hold Ferd responsible and prove his involvement in the case. According to Maria Lucas, Ferd was the only person who knew about the €3,000 hidden in Irene's house, and he was also the only one who could have secretly accessed the money. Another important detail is that Ferd used his father's illness as the main reason to go to Colombia. However, in reality, Ferd's father was not diagnosed with cancer and he is still healthy for his age. Juan was clearly scared and likely didn't understand what was happening as Brian approached and went up to Ferd and lifted him without directly threatening him with a gun. It seemed like the men knew each other and were acting together. Then, Ferd oddly moved behind Irene, who was sitting at the table, when she reached into her bag for her wallet. The man with the gun looked at another man as if waiting for a signal. It's unclear if he received any sign, as Irene and Ferd had their backs to the camera. After the shot, Ferd chased the killer but, according to experts, he deliberately let him escape. However, this claim is controversial because Brian was armed, and Ferd might have feared for his life. Ferd's behavior after Irene was declared dead was also questionable. He willingly gave interviews to reporters, discussed the details of the incident, and didn't appear too upset or depressed. Another important question is why, after the tragedy, Ferd called Irene's 14-year-old son instead of her mother, uncle, or any adult relatives to inform him of her death. Pedro Lucas, Irene's uncle, broke the silence by giving a press interview in which he openly expressed his suspicions and investigation findings. He firmly believed that Ferd had meticulously planned the trip to trap Irene. According to Pedro, Ferd used the stolen money to hire a killer and had plans to acquire guardianship of the children and take control of the business after Irene's death. Ferd's mother vehemently defended her son against the accusations. She claimed that Ferd truly loved Irene and the children and would never harm them. However, while defending Ferd, she inadvertently revealed that he had a tendency to take offense when his pride was hurt, particularly when it came to Irene's loyalty. Furthermore, a disturbing revelation emerged that Ferd had left Spain using forged documents, as he was not permitted to travel due to his recent parole release from prison. In response, Ferd denied the claim, stating that he departed the country legally, with Irene acting as his guarantor. Irene's body was finally returned to her native Spain 12 days after the tragedy. Due to the advanced state of decomposition, the coffin had to remain closed throughout the ceremony. Hundreds of mourners attended, including family, friends, neighbors, and even strangers who were moved by Irene's story. However, one person who was absent was none other than Ferd. Ferd chose not to return to Spain for the funeral, fearing retaliation from Irene's relatives. He claimed that they had repeatedly threatened him and his elderly mother, and so he decided to delay his return. Before attempting to return, Ferd sought a protection order from the authorities, but his request was denied. Feeling unprotected, he decided not to risk attending the funeral. Instead, Ferd took his concerns to court, filing a complaint against Irene's relatives, Maria and Pedro Lucas, alleging that they were preventing him from returning home. However, the couple denied Ferd's complaint, claiming that they actually wanted him to return to Spain to stand trial. Further investigations and trials were conducted with new details and charges against Ferd. Brian and Juan, who were serving time in a Colombian prison, were questioned about their relationship with Ferd and the possibility of a premeditated plot. However, Brian completely denied this theory. He maintained that the murder was simply the unintended consequence of a robbery gone wrong. Brian claimed that he had never met Ferd before and denied being hired as a hitman to kill Irene. The allegations seemed to lack any basis, with no clear evidence of premeditation or contract killing. There were only assumptions and interpretations of events from the recording. Brian admitted that he had consumed alcohol and drugs that night, so he did not remember the events clearly. Juan insisted that his friend had nothing to do with Ferd's plan and that everyone was shocked by what happened in the bar. Juan appears to be telling the truth, but the testimony of Brian, who fired the fatal shot, raises doubts. Although he did not commit the robbery, Brian's sick child is receiving expensive treatment in hospital. Brian claims that someone kind helped, but the lawyer claims that the €3,000 stolen from Irene were used for treatment. There are rumors that Brian accepted prison to save his child and secretly transferred the money to his wife, but this has not been proven. Ferd only returned to Spain after a court order to ensure his safety. Months passed and media attention waned. When he returned, Ferd claimed to have evidence proving his innocence in the murder of his wife. The main reason for his return was to take care of the children he had with Irene, who had been cared for by Irene's relatives during his absence. 6 months later, Ferd revealed in a major interview that his life had changed completely. He lost his job, had his passport confiscated, and was unable to leave the country. Worse still, his friends turned their backs on him. His late wife's mother and uncle prevented Ferd from seeing his children. Ferd repeatedly confronted Maria and Pedro Lucas in court. He accused them of threatening him, while they tried to prove that Ferd was involved in Irene's death. However, neither side could provide convincing evidence. As a result, Ferd's children remained in the care of his grandmother and uncle. Ferd was also unable to reclaim any of his late wife's assets. Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Kristen Rosam. Ralph and Constance Rosam were dedicated parents to their 3 children, prioritizing their kids' development and well-being above all else. Their children were educated from a young age, attended good schools, and they encouraging their children to explore their interests through a variety of extracurricular activities. However, their daughter Kristen struggled to cope with the pressure of living up to family expectations. Feeling overwhelmed and desperate to escape, Kristen began to rebel by lying, skipping school and finding ways to escape her temporary problems. At first, she felt more comfortable when she drank alcohol, but over time, the effects of alcohol stopped being effective for her. As a result, she turned to the controlled substance methamphetamine and eventually became dependent on it. Methamphetamine, commonly referred to as meth, is widely considered the most addictive illicit substance in the United States. Its use often leading to paranoia, impaired judgment, and euphoria. Kristen's parents noticed her erratic behavior and in a conversation, discovered she'd been struggling with the substance since high school. Her entire family, who were highly educated, were shocked and deeply affected by this behavior. After months of conflict with her parents, 17-year-old Kristen secretly ran away. While vacationing in Mexico with friends, she met a tall, handsome man named Gregory de Villers, who was 7 years her senior. Over time, they fell in love with each other. He helped her get settled and get her health back. With Gregory's support, she turned her life around by getting a job at the local forensic service as a toxicology assistant. Her skills impressed the employer and her addiction was forgotten. As a forensic assistant, Kristen graduated from college with honors, her teachers and employers praised her and gave her the Best Student Award without knowing the reason why she loved her chosen profession. After 5 years of dating Gregory, they had their grand wedding on June 5, 1999. Kristen's parents loved Gregory dearly and were relieved that their daughter had overcome the pain of her past and was now on the path toward a bright and fulfilling future. In March 2000, Kristen was hired by the San Diego County Medical Examiner's Office as a toxicologist, specializing in analyzing body fluids for narcotics. Gregory was working in the biotechnology industry at the time. But Kristen soon grew tired of her dull and monotonous life, and she began to look for excitement elsewhere. She met a new co-worker, Michael Robertson, who had just been appointed as the department head. Although Michael was married, they unexpectedly developed strong feelings for each other. They couldn't keep their relationship a secret for long. Gregory discovered many love letters between his wife and Michael. The marriage relationship was getting worse, yet Gregory remained hopeful that it could be salvaged. Understanding his wife's weakness, he made an effort to support and rescue her from her difficulties, hoping to mend their relationship. This time Kristen did not want to be saved. She asked for a divorce on Monday morning, November 6, 2000. Kristen was getting ready for work as usual. Gregory was sick and at home. Kristen was very tired worrying about her husband. In the days after their breakup talk, he was indifferent and unusually calm. Kristen informed Gregory's workplace that he was sick, and then she also visited her husband during her lunch break. Gregory fell asleep at 9:22 p.m. That same day, Kristen called the emergency services to report that her husband Gregory was not breathing. He had most likely committed suicide as he was home alone. Kristen was crying on the phone and she lost her temper, so she did not listen to the dispatcher's instructions about performing an autopsy and performing first aid on her husband. Police and paramedics arrived at the scene at 10:19 p.m. Gregory was pronounced dead. He was lying on the bedroom floor with his torso exposed, surrounded by scattered rose petals. An examination of the room revealed evidence suggesting that Gregory taking a fatal amount of multiple prescription medications. Empty painkiller bottles were scattered around the room, and torn wedding photos were found on his bed. When questioned, Kristen said she told Gregory she wanted to separate the night before, just over a year after their wedding. She felt regret about the marriage, thinking they rushed into it too quickly. Kristen also found Gregory too controlling and she wanted more space. Gregory's death was initially ruled a suicide, caused by a powerful sedative. Kristen signed the cremation papers, but Gregory's family and friends were skeptical. They had noticed no changes in his personality or mood, and they believed he would never use those fatal drugs. The family's doubts led them to try to stop the cremation and request an autopsy. Their persistence eventually led investigators to consider the possibility that Gregory's death was not a suicide, but a murder. An investigation into Gregory's death revealed the fentanyl, a painkiller 150 times more potent than morphine, along with smaller amounts of other substances including clonazepam and trace. Initially, the cause of death was suspected to be an overdose of oxycodone, often referred to as heroin, but further investigation pointed to fentanyl as the lethal dose. A substance can provide pain relief and produce a feeling of euphoria. However, it can also slow down breathing and be fatal if not treated in time. Because of the strong effects of clonazepam and other substances found in Gregory's body, investigators speculate that someone else intentionally gave him a fatal dose of fentanyl. Kristen became the prime suspect due to her extensive knowledge and access to powerful prescription medications like fentanyl. During questioning, Kristen's disheveled appearance and history of substance abuse raised suspicions about her potential involvement in Gregory's death. Her own testimony revealed inconsistencies on the day her husband died. Initially, Kristen told medical staff that he was not taking any medications, but later changed her statement to suggest that he may have taken oxycodone at the hospital. The change in her story, combined with her knowledge and access to powerful prescription drugs, supported the argument that Kristen was involved in her husband's death. On November 8, the police received a call from Russ Lowe, a coworker of Kristen's. Russ revealed that Kristen was having an affair with her boss. Further investigation uncovered evidence of Kristen's relationship with her boss, Michael. This evidence consisted of affectionate emails and computer documents. Notably, the documents also revealed Michael's knowledge of fentanyl, a substance that later became significant in the murder case. Kristen and Michael's relationship became a key aspect of the investigation. It is suspected that Gregory became a threat to Michael and Kristen because he knew that Kristen had access to the laboratory and that she had secretly used narcotics. Michael covered for Kristen, supporting her actions. During the investigation, Michael admitted to being aware of Kristen's drug addiction at the time. Although no charges were filed against Michael and Kristen, but they were both fired for violating several rules. Kristen's troubles started in January, when police searched her home for evidence of drug use. Initially, she was arrested but later released on bail. A new proof shed light on the investigation: Kristen's diary, uncovered during the initial examination. Kristen didn't write the diary for personal reflection, but rather as a way to present herself to others and maintain her innocence, while making her husband Gregory's death look like a perfect suicide. Notably, on the day of his death, Kristen bought a rose to pair with lingerie that suggested infidelity. A medical examination of Gregory's body revealed that he had been unconscious for at least 6 hours before his death. The estimated time of death was likely about an hour to an hour and a half before it was officially confirmed. Furthermore, bruises were found around the needle marks on his arm. During the investigation, a short supply of the lethal substance was discovered at Kristen's workplace, along with other narcotic substances. A suspicious vial of fentanyl was also found, leading police to suspect that Kristen had poisoned Gregory without his knowledge. Kristen was arrested on June 25, 2001, and charged with first-degree murder. After spending 6 months in custody, she was released on bail. The prosecution's main argument in her first trial centered around the motive for the murder. They claimed that Kristen killed Gregory to protect her reputation because he threatened to expose her drug addiction and her affair with Michael. The prosecution alleged that Kristen used a powerful synthetic opioid called fentanyl to poison Gregory. Fentanyl is 80 times more potent than morphine. It was suggested that Kristen initially attempted to kill Gregory with a different substance, clonazepam, but when this failed, she used fentanyl. To make it seem like Gregory had taken his own life, Kristen staged the scene by ripping out pages from her diary and placing personal items, including rose petals and a wedding photograph, around his body. As a biochemistry graduate, Kristen leveraged her knowledge of chemistry and drugs to orchestrate Gregory's death. The prosecution also claimed that Kristen deliberately withheld information about the fentanyl from her colleagues in the medical examiner's office, aiming to mislead them into believing Gregory's death was self-inflicted before his autopsy. The developments of what happened that day are reproduced as follows. On the morning of November 6, she contacted Gregory's workplace to report his absence, then headed to her workplace. Her colleagues stated that around 9 a.m., she began her workday. However, they recalled finding her crying in their Michael's office about an hour later. The manager of the apartment building where Kristen and Gregory were staying witnessed Kristen returning home at 12:10 p.m. Shortly after, at 12:41 p.m., Kristen went to a nearby grocery store and bought various items. Among these purchases was a credit card statement. This confirmed her emergence at the store several hours before Gregory's death. Additionally, Kristen made multiple phone calls to Michael. The San Diego County Medical Examiner, Dr. Blackburn, who performed Gregory's autopsy, testified that Gregory had been deceased for at least an hour by the time paramedics arrived. The examiner also disclosed that Gregory was suffering from early-stage bronchopneumonia at the time of death. Breathing difficulties occur when lung secretions accumulate, often as a result of poor breathing. This can happen when a person is unconscious or taking very shallow breaths. Dr. Blackburn presented additional evidence, stating that Gregory's body contained a significant amount of urine in his bladder at the time of death. This accumulation would have caused severe discomfort if Gregory was conscious, suggesting he likely struggled to breathe for 6 to 12 hours before his death. Furthermore, Dr. Blackburn found it unlikely that Gregory, in an unconscious state, could have scattered rose petals on himself. During the trial, Dr. Blackburn also testified that the level of clonazepam in Gregory's blood was not high enough to be considered an overdose, and therefore, would not have been the cause of death. Dr. Theodore Stanley, testifying for the prosecution, stated that fentanyl, a powerful and fast-acting painkiller, can have severe side effects leading to respiratory arrest. The onset of its effects varies, based on the administration method. The fastest method of maximal effect is intravenous administration, which occurs within about 5 minutes. Intramuscular injection results in maximum effect within 15 to 20 minutes. This is followed by oral administration, with maximum effect within 20 to 30 minutes. The slowest method of maximal effect is the transdermal patch, which takes about 16 hours. Dr. Theodore testified before the court that fentanyl is typically not taken orally because the liver breaks down approximately 65% of the substance. As a result, only 35% of fentanyl is able to enter the bloodstream. However, when questioned about how fentanyl was detected in Gregory's body, neither Dr. Blackburn nor Dr. Theodore was able to provide a clear explanation. Dr. Theodore found that the amounts of fentanyl in Gregory's body, combined with the fact that Gregory had been unconscious and breathing shallowly for hours before his death, suggested that the fentanyl may have been given to Gregory by someone else. During the trial, the prosecution had difficulty explaining to the jury exactly how Kristen poisoned her husband. However, there was evidence that she may have applied a fentanyl patch to Gregory's arm while he was sleeping. Kristen's former workplace provided a crucial piece of evidence, as 15 fentanyl patches were discovered missing from the lab. While Kristen maintained her innocence, her defense team accepted that fentanyl was the cause of Gregory's death, but they suggested an alternative explanation. According to the defense, Gregory intentionally gave himself a fatal dose due to feelings of desperation about family problems. In court, Kristen recounted her of events on the morning of November 6th. She recalled waking up to find Gregory in a state of distress. Gregory called his employer at 7:42 a.m. to report his illness and informed them that he would not be going to work. Kristen claimed she left for work, but returned to their apartment during her lunch break to check on Gregory. When she asked him why he was so upset, Gregory replied that he was feeling unwell due to taking oxycodone and clonazepam and planned to stay home and rest. Kristen returned to work after that and came home around 8 p.m. Upon arrival, she found Gregory in bed and assumed he was asleep. She went to take a shower, and when came out, she tried to wake him, but when she touched him she felt cold. Kristen then immediately called emergency services. During questioning, the prosecutor questioned the validity of Kristen's explanation. She admitted to lying in the past and lying about her drug use, which made her testimony seem suspect. Autopsy and toxicology results showed that Gregory had been unconscious for approximately 6 to 8 hours before his death, contradicting Kristen's initial claim that they had lunch together that day. The defense argued that the concentration of clonazepam in Gregory's blood was not fatal on its own. However, they acknowledged that the combined effects of oxycodone, an opiate, and clonazepam, a benzodiazepine, could be more potent than the effects of either substance alone. They suggested that Gregory may have accidentally taken the drugs, but they could not explain why the high concentration of fentanyl was found in his body, which remains unexplained. After 8 hours of deliberation, The jury found Kristen guilty of first-degree murder and special circumstance murder due to poisoning. She was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Kristen claimed innocence and appealed the verdict in the appellate court, where a critical mistake by her own defense team was discovered. Her lawyers had admitted that fentanyl caused the death but failed to test the autopsy samples for fentanyl metabolites. This important test will help determine whether Gregory ingested fentanyl and whether the fentanyl in his body was due to contamination from laboratory testing rather than what he actually ate in. If fentanyl was only detected in the samples and not in Gregory's body, the prosecution's theory that fentanyl caused his death would be incorrect. The appeal also revealed a chain of custody violation regarding the samples. Although the samples were marked and placed in a cardboard box, the containers were not sealed. They were left at the medical examiner's office for approximately 36 hours before being shipped to the sheriff's forensic lab due to the recipient's absence. During this time, the samples were potentially accessible to anyone with a key to the medical examiner's office building, raising concerns that someone may have contaminated the samples. Kristen's appeal contends that any individual with a motive to falsify evidence could have added the substance to the sample. A panel of judges from the 9th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals reviewed Kristen's case and concluded that her lawyers had made a serious error. The prosecution claimed Gregory died of a fentanyl overdose. Kristen's lawyers, however, did not contest that claim. Instead, they accepted the fentanyl overdose explanation. The judges did not overturn the verdict but sent the case back to the lower court to decide whether the defense's error could have changed the outcome of the trial. The U.S. Supreme Court has issued a ruling stating that federal courts must respect the decisions made by state courts in similar cases. This ruling impacts Kristen's case, as the court has voted against a hearing and her appeal was denied, leaving her in custody. Kristen's trial was not the only part of the case. She had a co-defendant named Michael. Although he was not in the U.S. for the trial, he is still a part of the case and risks being arrested if he returns. However, he may be eligible for a $100,000 bail. Michael has been living in Australia, where he works as a forensic toxicologist. Kristen Rosam was arrested in 2003 and received a life sentence without parole. Gregory's family is now suing the county for allowing Kristen to steal a lethal dose of the same drug without detection, and they blame the county's negligence for her crime.